Yo, what's up, Core Chronicles fam? Get ready to power up with another epic. What if that's gonna blow your scouter right off? Today, we're fusing the worlds of My Hero Academia and Dragon Ball in a crossover for the ages. What if Deku became the strongest Saiyan? In this wild alternate universe, Izuku Midoriya isn't just the quirkless underdog we know. He's a Saiyan with unstoppable potential. Imagine Deku training under Goku, mastering ki blasts, and unleashing Super Saiyan transformations that shake the very fabric of the hero world. With power levels off the charts, how will Class 1A handle the might of this unstoppable force? And what happens when villains like All For One meet a Saiyan's wrath? If you're hyped for explosive battles, epic rivalries, and Deku going full Saiyan mode, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with all your crossover-loving friends. Let's go plus ultra and beyond. Entrance exam. 7 years have been a long time for a lot of things to happen. Today marked the 7 years anniversary since Cell, terrible monster who had threatened to destroy the Earth, had been defeated by the savior of this world, Hercules Satan. Or it is what many in the world had believed in their hearts. Hercules Satan is a world martial artist champion and a small-time hero who hoped to make it big by defeating the terrible Cell when many had tried and failed. Fortunately for him, luck had been on his side on that day, as the world had mistakenly assumed that he defeated Cell, which he did not deny. In reality, Hercules had been swatted away by Cell not even a second after he attacked, and left incapacitated throughout it all, leaving the true heroes to fight and defeat Cell. It was only due to the debris that covered the camera that no one knew the truth except for very few. One of the heroes who had defeated Cell currently lives in a one-story modern luxury home that is big enough to sustain a small family of 4. Although only 2 people live there, despite it being a one-story home, it does actually have an underground floor where the 2 residents of the home actually train in secret without anyone interrupting them or bothering them about any noises they might make while training. The home is currently surrounded by fences equipped with security that has allowed the owners of the home to be notified of those that come and exit the property. Although it is unnecessary, as there is no one in this world that could ever hope to challenge them, but better be safe than sorry. Leaving that aside, in the backyard of the mansion, there is a swimming pool with an unmanned bar that serves the drink. A small garden is located in the front yard of the property, which gives a visually appealing sight to those who pass by the property. All of this was the perks of being associated with Bulma Briefs, who is one of the world's wealthiest women, even listed in Forbes. Albeit, there are things that they had bought themselves or had made themselves using their own hands or through key manipulation. Today is the entrance exam. You should get going, or you might get late. Inko interrupted the silence, clearly not intimidated nor bothered by the sight of the dirty plates stacking over each other to create a pillar that reached the ceiling. It's really expected that with 2 Saiyans living together, that they would eat this much. How they clean the dish, they had their own machines to clean it for them. Although, Inko does clean them from time to time when she really has nothing better to do. Inko Midoriya is a beautiful woman who still looked to be in her early 30s despite being older, but that was really expected as Saiyans do age far slower in order to remain in their prime for as long as possible. As a Saiyan, she still continued to train even to this day. Her hair was dark green tied in a ponytail with her eyes being black. Inko was not her real name. It was a human name she had picked up in order to mingle with the humans when she first arrived here years before Vegeta and years after Goku. Her actual real Saiyan name was actually Echelon. Yeah, I know, Izuku said with a sigh as he rubbed his belly that had bloated due to how much food he had digested. Like Inko, Izuku had inherited similar traits as her, like the dark green hair and black eyes. He also had a mature look to him, appearing to be a bit older than he normally is. After freshening up, Izuku had come down wearing clothes from his former middle school Aldera. Inko, showing her support, is now standing near the door ready to see him off as he heads to his future hero school UA. Make sure to crush the competition, Shalat, Inko said as she ruffled his hair, while Izuku grinned back. Inko had thought it would be natural that she would grant her son a traditional Saiyan name, and so she came up with the name of Shalat, which closely resembled her own. I will naturally crush all of them, Izuku said with a smirk, not out of arrogance, but because he already knew that he is the strongest on the planet, and there is no one besides a select few that could even hope to challenge him. For that very reason, Izuku was confident in his own capabilities. "You've come quite far from the child who once cried over not receiving those silly quirks," Inko said with a proud look while Izuku scratched the back of his head in clear embarrassment as he remembered how much he had despaired when he first learned that he was quirkless. "Please don't remind me of that. It's kind of embarrassing," Izuku said with a blush while Inko had laughed as she did enjoy teasing him about his past, but it was harmless. She wanted to simply remind him how much he had grown from before. Izuku used to be shy and often got dragged along with Bakugo and his goons. When Izuku was declared quirkless, it crushed his spirit, especially when the other humans mistreated him. Inko frowned a little as she remembered the past. The kindergarten at the time had refused to take accountability when she brought up the issue of her son being bullied, but they labeled her son being harassed as rough housing between kids, but she knew what they were thinking. As 80% of the population are now wielding powers that they thought existed only in the comics books, it was only natural that many would start assuming that quirk users are now the next evolution of humanity, and those that do not develop one are defects. If it wasn't for her many years of self-control, she would have wasted no time in vaporizing them on the spot and then burning down the entire kindergarten. To think that those lesser beings, not even worth the pebble on the side of the road, would act all high and mighty with her. Luckily for her, Bulma had learned about it, and immediately that kindergarten was shut down by the very next day. All of their dirty secrets they kept close to their chest was aired out in the open, and it was only a matter of time before a lot of parents hounded the former kindergarten. After that day, Izuku had gotten homeschooled for a very long time alongside Gohan, although she was not as strict about his studies as Chi-Chi had been with Gohan, as Inko truly believed there should be a balance between studies, training, and hobbies. It was only after the Cell game that she had allowed Izuku to return back to middle school so he could make connections with others his age. She is now glad to hear that Izuku had made a few friends that he could trust, some which already knew the truth about him. "You should get going," Inko said as she gave him a pat on the back while he nodded as he walked outside the home. He glanced at the watch and saw that it was 8:22 a.m. and the exam was going to start at 9:30 a.m. Izuku didn't live that far from UA compared to Gohan, who lived in MT Paozu, which is hours away from here. Izuku was in no particular rush, but he often preferred to meet his friends halfway and then walk slowly together towards their own destination. "Gohan, over here," Izuku called out as he saw the black-haired teen waiting a few distance away. It was clear that Gohan had been waiting for them after he had sensed them. Izuku didn't come alone, as he had his amigo tagging along with him. "Izuku, you're really here." Gohan spoke with a grin on his face, clearly excited as he walked at fast pace towards Izuku, while the latter raised an eyebrow as he checked on what Gohan had been made to wear, which he did expect since Chi-Chi would have picked this for him. "You're looking more and more like a nerd every passing day." Bakugo spoke as he saw the suit that Gohan was wearing. It was a bit too stuffy, while Gohan had awkwardly started to rub the back of his head out of habit while chuckling a bit at the comment, since he was often reminded of that fact by Bakugo and Izuku. "Mom had insisted on picking it for me." Gohan chuckled awkwardly. "She said I can't go around looking like a delinquent on my very first day, especially right in front of the UA staff who will be watching." Gohan ran his hand on the suit. It was obvious he was uncomfortable, but never voiced his complaints. "Typical Annie Chi-Chi." Izuku laughed before he shook his head. It was really expected. Chi-Chi was, after all, one of those helicopter parents that you'd see in those documentary shows on TV. In the first place, it was a total surprise for many that she had allowed Gohan to attend UA despite having for years stubbornly insisted on turning him into a scholar that she could be proud of. But Izuku knew Chi-Chi too well and knew what buttons to push. It so happens that the only thing that would ever change her mind was money. When Izuku casually brought up how much money a hero makes compared to a scholar, she had completely lost it, and thus she started to encourage Gohan to join UA. It's one of those times that Izuku was grateful that his mother was the flexible type. Even Katsuki, who was at odds with his mom in the past, had developed a newfound appreciation for her after his first encounter with the Beast, which is named Chi-Chi. "Let's not waste any daylight and get inside." Katsuki cut in, receiving a nod from both half-breed Saiyans. Despite the fact that it was still somewhat early, The three teens walked into the UA auditorium in which they will be taking their exams. The only source of light inside is that of the large screen at the front, which has the UA logo in gold colors and blue background. There were a sizable number of people inside the auditorium, some who clearly came early either due to the anxiety or other reasons. Since Izuku and Katsuki had gone to the very same middle school, they were bound to get a seat next to each other along with the ones who came from the same middle school as them. On the other hand, Gohan, who was homeschooled for almost all his life, had found himself much to his disappointment on the other side of the auditorium, where students like him are located. As a result, he had to separate from both Izuku and Katsuki. "I will see you later, guys." Gohan raised a hand to wave a goodbye, which had been half-heartedly returned by both Izuku and Bakugo. Naturally, Gohan had garnered some attention, given that his voice was somewhat loud compared to the others. Izuku and Bakugo both sat rather comfortably, almost to the point of lounging on their respective seats, which garnered them attention, as many were rather unnerved by how calm and collected they were despite being known for how hard it is to enter. It wasn't a baseless confidence. For Izuku, he was the strongest man in the entire planet, only rivaled by Gohan and Vegeta. He had earned the right to have his head held high and to act in any way he wishes because that's the right of the strong. For Katsuki, while he can't compare to the potential of the Saiyans, he was not weak either. Even by the Z Warrior standards, he is seen as strong. He even received key training and had fully awakened his explosion quirk to its fullest potential. "So, you named your quirk Disaster?" Katsuki looked surprised. "How did you get away with a name like that?" Katsuki assumed that such a violent name would have not been approved, but much to his surprise, it did. Izuku didn't have a quirk. He was quirkless like the rest of the 20%. Even then, very few people know about the existence of Ki, mainly because it's a well-kept secret among the Ki practitioners around the world, not to mention the fact that Ki is not easy to learn for normal people. As such, Izuku couldn't just go around spamming all kinds of attacks, because everyone will start looking at him suspiciously. As such, long before he applied for UA, Izuku already came up with a fake quirk and registered it years prior to avoid suspicion if someone were to try and dig for information on him. Endeavor's quirk is called Hell Flame, Izuku said with a deadpan. Besides, the word disaster is a rather vague word. It could mean many things, and so if I were to actually do something abnormal and questionable to others, I could get away with it. Izuku explained calmly. Katsuki understood what he meant. Disaster might mean that Izuku might be able to wield an elemental quirk comparable to natural disasters. It could also mean the opposite in terms that Izuku is a counter to disaster-related attacks. As such, Katsuki liked the name. "I guess you're right." Bakugo hummed in agreement. By then, Present Mike and walked to the center of the auditorium and towards the podium that was there from the start. As expected of the very eccentric hero who hosts his radio show every week, he had made a very flashy entrance trying to get the new prospective heroes to go along with him, but much to his disappointment, no one cheered or even showed a hint of enthusiasm. It was naturally expected. The hundreds of attendees today are either way too nervous to go along with the hero's eccentricities due to how the acceptance rate at UA is low, or they simply just didn't want to be caught dead looking like a total fool in front of many by cheering. Present Mike was not discouraged when he received no cheers. Instead, he had wasted no time in explaining the practical exams. In short, the test is revealed to be a 10-minute-long cityscape maneuver. Each competitor is assigned to a testing location. Exam ticket, Examineno 2234. Test location, Battle Center B. On Battle Center B, Izuku spoke in a low voice before he shot a look at Katsuki's card, and it confirmed his suspicion since the ashy blonde explosion user was instead assigned to Battle Center A. Exam ticket, Examinee No. 2233. Test location, Battle Center A. That's so kids from the same middle school can't help each other out, yeah? Katsuki guessed, which Izuku had found himself agreeing to since it was only logical. The practical exam of the UA entrance exam was designed in order to test the capability of each individual examinee that wants to attend the most powerful hero school that had produced the top heroes of Japan. As such, it's expected that UA staff would prefer to avoid examinees from teaming up. As expected, this year's exam was robot-based. There were 3 faux-villain robots. Points were awarded based on the difficulty of each one of them. For instance, The first is a one-pointer, the second is two-pointer, and lastly the third is a three-pointer. Their goal as examinees aiming to join the prestigious hero school in Japan is to go around and destroy each one of the robots acquiring points, which are all being calculated by the staff. This would be helpful in sorting out the students in both Class A and Class B. Naturally, examinees going around playing anti-hero by attacking others is prohibited, and thus if such a scenario were to occur, the person in question will be extracted from the school grounds and may face legal consequences depending on their action. PSSH. This is so stupid, Izuku thought. He already anticipated the entrance exam would be the same as all the years before, and so he knew that his own powers made him overqualified. May I ask a question? A hand was raised, abruptly interrupting present mic explanation. From among the crowd of examinees, a teen stood up wearing a brown-colored suit that looked quite expensive, denoting that the person was a rich snob. Why am I not surprised? Izuku's lips curled into amusement. This is still UA High. It's expected that there would be elitists in the midst of such a crowd. I was honestly wondering when one of them would make their debut. Izuku let out a sigh. Generally, children of wealthy families receive recommendation letters which allows them to take separate exams from the entrance exam. The exam was a guaranteed entrance to UA. If anything, the recommendation exams are just there for formality's sake. After all, most of the recommendation students come from families who are sponsoring UA. That meant that they couldn't afford to kick them out since it would mean they'd lose money. UA might try to vehemently deny it, but in the end, nepotism will always remain a general issue in every working place. Which is why Izuku was mildly surprised that the younger brother of the hero Ingenium is among such a crowd instead of getting a recommendation from his own older brother or maybe his hero family. There appear to be no fewer than 4 varieties of faux villains in this handout, the bespectacled teen shouted while pointing his finger at the handout paper in his hands. The light of the auditorium shone down on him, allowing others to see him far more clearly. Such a blatant error, if it is one, is highly unbecoming for UA, Japan's top academy. The teen tune shifted to reprimand. We're all here today in the hopes of being molded into model heroes. He continued to shout, as if he already didn't cause enough scene for a single day. For eyes quickly turned around, shifting his attention towards the back row seats, glaring with his judgmental eyes, trying to obviously find fault in others in order to criticize in front of many. And you with the black spiky hair. He pointed towards Gohan, who currently sat at the back of the auditorium. Gohan was startled as he pointed at himself in clear confusion as to why he is being called out while Izuku and Bakugo are getting quickly annoyed. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting, he reprimanded. If this is some sort of game to you, then please leave immediately. He glared at Gohan, who looked nervous as he rubbed the back of his head while offering a small apology, which made others laugh. Why are you even concerning yourself with what happens at the back of the auditorium? Izuku had abruptly stood up, getting attention from pretty much everyone and startling the teen. Excuse me. The teen was startled by being confronted like that. It was very obvious to Izuku that the teen didn't have anyone curbing his entitled attitude. Not only that, Izuku just couldn't tolerate the idea of anyone disrespecting his friend, especially in front of him. You heard me, dipshit. Izuku smirked, earning him a few gasps of shock from the examinees. The fact that you're even throwing your damn ears at the very back of the auditorium shows that you weren't actually paying any attention at all to present mixed explanations. Izuku glared. You even had the audacity to interrupt present Mike in the middle of his own explanation and openly and brazenly criticized UA. Izuku continued. Aren't you getting ahead of yourself? The one who should leave is you, not him. You shameless and disrespectful bastard. Izuku glared. The teen in question was extremely flustered and downright embarrassed as everyone laughed at him. At this point, he found himself awkwardly returning back to his seat while lowering his head in clear shame. Izuku's lips curled into a satisfied smirk before he too sat down. All right. Let's cool it, everyone. Present Mike interjected in order to start de-escalating the situation. Examinee 7111, nice catch. Thanks. Present Mike looked at the teen with glasses, trying to get the heat off him since some were still laughing. But the fourth faux villain variety gets you only 0 points. He's more of an obstacle. Present Mike continued while the teen from earlier looked even more embarrassed at the revelation. The zero-pointer was like a thwomp from the old retro game Mario Brothers. It was a gimmick that'll rampage around in close quarters. In that sense, it had served no other purpose other than to be avoided. Izuku did not believe that this was the only purpose of the zero-pointer. They want to evaluate how the examinees would react against an unbeatable opponent. Izuku thought, will they confront the foe villain? Avoid it? Or will they finally overcome their fears and help others? Izuku mused with a clear disinterest. That's all from me. I'll leave my listeners with our school motto. The great hero Napoleon Bonaparte had once said, "True heroism consists in being superior to the ills of life." Present Mike's lips stretched into a smile. "Producer, break a leg, everyone," shouted Present Mike encouragingly. "Practical exam disaster. I feel bad for what I'm going to do." Izuku whispered ruefully, but despite those words, there was no hint of regret. After the explanation, they were all taken to their respective assigned cities through a bus. Each of the examinees present had changed to different sportswear clothes. For Izuku, he wore a simple black half-sleeve shirt and blue pants. Izuku just stretched his body here and there, clearly minding his own business and just ignoring any looks he might be receiving, including the four-eyed bastard from a while back. He stretched his senses, pinpointing each robot in the city. There were around 100 plus of them inside. His lips stretched into a grin. He knew what he was going to do will definitely turn him into the most hated person by the others who are unfortunate enough to share the same battle center as him. "And begin!" Present Mike shouted through the intercom. Izuku immediately launched himself inside the city, startling others. "What's wrong? The test started. Run! Run!" Present Mike shouted once more, causing all of them to rush inside in panic. "It's already over." Izuku grinned as his hand started to glow a green glow. In an instant, through an inexplicable phenomenon, all of the robots in the battle center were instantly denied gravity and thus were flung very high into the air without any warning. Everyone in the battle center held their breath as they watched all the robots converging into the air, surrounded by a green psychic aura that is the result of Izuku using telekinesis. Izuku grinned even more as right before their eyes, he had then clenched his fist slowly. KRSSSH. Boom! The explosion was naturally contained through the psychic green energy that had acted as an insulation. All the robots, without exception, were destroyed on the spot, leaving nothing but the dust and debris. Everyone went silent as they held their breath. "Oh, this got to be a J joke." One of the examinees spoke shakily. "All right, there is no way this is allowed. Hey, this got to be illegal." The examinee shouted, trying to get the staff to hear him, which they did. All the faux villain robots in the Battle Center B had been neutralized. "Congratulations, examinee No. 2234 for breaking the record." Everyone had received the answer to their questions directly from the principal of UA himself, Nizu. The principal voice didn't show any hint of surprise, as if having expected such an outcome. On the contrary, the other staff of UA, who were all present in the control room, were all surprised by the result. That also includes the homeroom teacher of this year's Class 1A, Shota Aizawa. "Don't fuck with me." One of the examinees roared in clear anger, a sentiment that is closely shared by many in the Battle Center B. "How is this fair on any of us?" He continued to spit out in anger. Some even started to cry from among the examinees. "That's right," a female examinee shouted as well. "How is this fair for any of us? We demand a retry. Damn it. UA can't do this. We didn't even get to take the exams." She had continued to shout in clear indignation, receiving support from many. Izuku casually titled his head to the side, avoiding a right hook that was aimed at him from behind. He followed this by jumping, avoiding an attempt to tackle him to the ground. He expected this to happen. Many would obviously seek to take revenge on him. "Oh wow, you guys are something else." Izuku laughed, only adding more fuel to the fire. "Don't you know there are consequences for playing an anti-hero?" Izuku warned, but it was obvious that none of them were planning to listen to him. "Shut up," a muscle-bound idiot shouted, launching both of his big arms for a chokehold. "This is all your fault, you selfish bastard. Go to hell." He shouted along with the others, but he casually avoided the many attempts to hold him down. Already went there and took a stroll around the area, and I have to tell you, this place is boring as hell." Izuku laughed. It was actually true that he had taken a few trips to hell at one point, and God, that place is boring as hell. Izuku could guess that this is the purpose of hell, to bore the hell out of the condemned soul. Besides, why am I being blamed? Izuku asked. The rules were pretty clear. Destroy the faux villains to score points. If you should blame anyone, blame UA for not placing any restrictions. Izuku snorted in amusement. Or you could go and blame your luck for ending up in the same battle center as me. Izuku laughed as none of them could even reach him. Or rather, you could blame yourselves for not being fast enough to score a single point. He taunted, only fueling their anger even more. This is not fair. One of them roared in his face while he rolled his eyes. It's not our fault that we ended up with a bastard like you. I worked so hard to get here. The examinee breathed fire in his face, which Izuku blew away with his breath, much to his shock. 023. Diablo from Tenshura. Fairness and equality? Izuku scoffed and laughed mockingly. Since when was the world ever fair to anyone? From the moment Quirk itself came to be, the concept of fairness and equality were nothing more than an old relic of the distant past. Izuku mocked. In a real-life scenario, what I did was logical. Izuku continued to dodge. I saved the city a lot of money that could have been wasted on rebuilding the damaged infrastructures. I also saved the life of civilians who could have been hurt, crippled, or died. Every second matters in real life. If you're even late by a millisecond, the life of someone could be snuffed out by a villain. They lagged behind even when President Mike declared the start of the exam. He didn't do anything wrong. Izuku had efficiently and quickly neutralized the threat to the city. He had saved countless civilian lives who could have easily lost their lives, which meant that the government wouldn't also have to pay a lot of compensation for families who lost someone. He also prevented the unnecessary destruction of property and infrastructures that cost a lot to fix. What Izuku did was what any model hero should aspire to be. It was not his fault they were slow. Before the situation could escalate any further, the quirks of all the examinees were temporarily erased. Shota, Aizawa Racerhead, quickly arrived on the scene, followed by Ectoplasm. It was quite obvious they came to put a stop to this and assuage the examinees from committing a felony. That's enough. Aizawa's voice was harsh, making many flinch as he glared at everyone with the exception of Izuku. We clearly warned you all that any attempt to attack another examinee could lead to repercussions. Aizawa was quick to remind them, making them gulp. Ectoplasm had his clone go around to separate the examinees from Izuku, who, for his credit, didn't even raise a single hand at any of them, which could have complicated his situation if he did. Everyone had their heads lowered, while Izuku looked unremorseful. Now then, Ectoplasm interjected in place of Aizawa. We understand that many of you are dissatisfied with what happened, but Examinee No. 2234 did not break any rules. Ectoplasm attempted to slowly calm them down, but it had only irked them more. Break any rules? Aizawa had scoffed, getting the attention back at him. His action, if anything, was exemplary. Aizawa pointed his finger at Izuku. This is what is expected from anyone aiming to join UA High. He efficiently and swiftly took down the villains without wasting even a second. Many ground their teeth in frustration. Some had already started to shed tears of sorrow. Ectoplasm, seeing this, decided to interject, knowing that any more of Aizawa could cause problems for the examinee's mental psyche and could get some of them to go crazy. Regardless, the blame falls on us. Ectoplasm interjected, getting attention back at him. Examinee No. 2234 has already passed. All of you are going to get a second chance to retry the exams in order to give you all the chance to display your quirks. The revelation had quickly brightened the expression of everyone in the Battle Center B. Hope returned back to their eyes, while Izuku shrugged his shoulders as he predicted this would happen either way. Once again, the staff of UA extend a sincere apology to each one of you. Ectoplasm repeated calmly. Some of us were aware that Examinee 2234 is overqualified, but we allowed him to compete in order to avoid showing any favoritism. Ectoplasm justified UA's action. Everyone seemed to calm down while others scoffed. If they knew Izuku was overqualified, why the hell did UA allow him to participate among them? They should have thrown him into the recommendation exams amongst the other elitists. Right now, We've refilled the entire city with robots. Ectoplasm got serious. We ask you to return back outside the city and wait for the countdown. The examinee 2234 won't be participating as he has already passed. Ectoplasm had finished much to their relief. Let's go, problem child. Aizawa motioned for Izuku to follow him, which made him sweat drop at the nickname. Let's escort you outside. You've already got a seat at 1A. Aizawa patted Izuku's back. He didn't particularly approve of Izuku's condescending behavior, as well as his habit of egging others, but he also couldn't deny that what the green-haired teen said was right. He didn't do anything wrong. If anything, Aizawa had seen Izuku as a perfect example of a hero. Sure thing, sensei. Izuku listened without any complaint before he turned his head slightly towards the others. Good luck to all of you. Do your best. Izuku waved them goodbye. Go fuck yourself, you asshole. One of them shouted, a sentiment shared by a few. Albeit it seems that many had calmed down and their aggression had dialed down after learning they were given a second chance. Either way, he did not care. All the faux villain robots in the battle center had been neutralized. Congratulations, examinee No. 2233. Nizu's voice had reverberated once more across all battle centers, as it seems that Bakugo had actually destroyed more than half of the robots inside his city, which he could sense. It took him a bit longer to finish. Izuku whispered to himself as he ignored the earlier insult. It was not worth it answering the provocation. Not to mention, he can't behave condescendingly in front of the staff of UA. Part of him also had understood their anger. Even then, he won't apologize for what he did. He followed the rules down to the letter. If he was at fault, he would have admitted it himself and apologized for his action, but he wasn't. With that said, Izuku followed the two staff without any complaints. That was completely unreasonable of him. Toshinori complained openly in hopes he'd garner some sort of support from his fellow staff members, but he had little luck at that, as either they supported his action or they took a more neutral stance. Toshinori Yagi is none other than the #1 pro hero, as well as the symbol of peace all might. Currently, he has adopted his true form, which is a skinny version of himself. No one aside from very few knew about the identity behind the symbol of peace. I have to agree. Midnight showed her support. But at the very same time, he didn't break any rules. He did perfectly what he was told to do and had a very reasonable cause behind it. Midnight sighed. Her position was impartial, as most other staff present. I don't see anything wrong with his decision. Snipe interjected. Even though his intention may not have been completely pure, but as he had stated, if this is a real hero versus villain scenario, his action is ultimately the correct one. Snipe showed his support towards Izuku's actions. I'm not saying his decision was the wrong one. Toshinori defended himself. If anything, I'm impressed by his great control and command he has over his Quirk. I'm sure he'd be a great hero of his own, but Toshinori admitted and then paused. I also think this is extreme on his part, especially since this is an exam that is aimed to evaluate the very next generation of pro heroes. Toshinori reminded them. Ultimately, don't you all think he might have been selfish? Toshinori asked, but no one seemed to agree with him. Aren't you also the same as him? All Might? Vlad King had pointed out the hypocrisy in those complaints. Despite the terrible state your body is in, you continue to waste it on low-level grunts, not allowing any of the other heroes to handle it. Toshinori flinched right away. Some snickered at him at having his hypocrisy pointed out. He tried to open his mouth to justify his action, but ultimately, Vlad was right. It's understandable that you feel so strongly about this, my friend, Nizu said with a smile. But you should understand that less than 30 people from among those hundreds of examinees will be chosen to fill both of the hero classes. Nizu reminded not just Toshinori, but everyone. The hero course consists solely of both Class 1A and Class 1B. There is a 20-student limit per class. If you just do a simple math addition, the hero course has a 40-student limit. If you subtract the already accepted recommended students had been accepted so far, there are currently 36 seats that are open for anyone to take in the entrance exam. In that sense, only the most impressive individuals will be able to join the UA High Hero course. It's unfortunate, but as Izuku Midoriya himself had stated, Nizu's eyes had darkened. The concept of fairness and equality is nothing more than a distant relic of the past. Niza then turned to look Tashinori in the eyes, daring him to challenge his words. I think he was a bit condescending with the other examinees. President Mike started. We should curb that habit early on, since heroes will be expected to de-escalate situations and not add fire to the gas. Everyone seems to agree with him. I think he already knows that. Hound Dog gruffly spoke. He had received a full mark in his written exam. He lifted the graded paper to show to some of the other staff who had yet to know about it, which had surprised many of them at the test scores. The written exams of UA High consist of things like math, science, and other basic related subjects that one studies in their middle school. The reason why Hound Dog pointed this out is because hidden in the written exam paper were opinion-based questions. Those opinion-based questions hidden in the exam are aimed to evaluate the character of the ones wanting to join their hero school. Of course, the question was pretty basic, so they could only get a surface-level idea of what they were dealing with. Izuku exams show that he is a sort of maverick. Despite his somewhat chaotic personality, he could be reasoned with and has no problem complying or even apologizing if he feels that he is in the wrong. He's definitely a chaotic person, Hound Dog continued. But I believe that he is ultimately on the good side. Given his compliance with both Eraserhead and Ectoplasm, it could be ruled that he is a reasonable individual who is very much capable of listening to authorities. Well, that's good. Cementas spoke with relief. Rebellious students are often the very hardest to deal with. I too think that he isn't as bad as he may appear. I believe he has a unique way of speaking. Many seem to also agree with his sentiment. He's the maverick type. Hound Dog corrected. He knew what his action would have led and ultimately went through with it. I don't think he cares all that much about what others believe in him, a very helpful thing if you wish to be part of the limelight. Heroes are always under scrutiny by many. Most people often believe that being a hero means being popular and rich while receiving the adoration of the public, but there is more to it than that, as this is only the tip of the iceberg. As heroes, there will naturally be those who dislike you. It was natural, as you can't get everyone to like you. Those who worry excessively over what others think of them, and those who wear their hearts on their sleeves will have the hardest time being heroes. His action also shows a strength in his character. Hound Dog continued. He had been willing to sacrifice his likability among the other examinees in order to do the right thing. That is, if we're talking in a real-life scenario. So one could also say that he is decisive in taking action. Tashinori contemplated those words said by Hound Dog and ultimately found himself acknowledging his own hypocrisy. The other staff at UA seemed to also agree with the lifestyle guidance counselor. They watched as Izuku was being escorted by Aizawa and Ectoplasm. Did they ambush you as well? Izuku laughed as he watched Bakugo walking while grumbling angrily. Izuku guessed correctly because after the ashy blonde explosion user went around destroying 99% of the robots in City A, the others had been quick to band together to beat him up. Surprisingly, Bakugo exercised great restraint when dealing with all of them, as he opted to dodge all the attacks aimed at him until the staff at UA had arrived to de-escalate the situation. Before long, the two of them were escorted to the entrance of UA. So they did the same to you? Bakugo rhetorically asked, and then he huffed. He had been half tempted to launch an explosion at the time at those who dared to attack him, but Katsuki Bakugo was anything but stupid, so he did nothing but dodge. I didn't do anything wrong. This is UA, the best hero academy in the country. Katsuki scoffed angrily as he remembered the words of those weaklings. Do those people think they can make the cut with their mediocre skills and their quirks? While ultimately everyone is free to have their dreams of what they want to be, there is a difference between dreams and delusion. Dreams can be attained if you're willing to put the necessary effort and dedication. Delusion, on the other hand, is when you insist on something that is impossible. In Katsuki Bakugo's dictionary, those people were delusional. While there might have been some impressive individuals in his city, but the rest were all trash. I mean, what can a guy who could twist his fingers do as a hero? It's delusional. Totally understand. Izuku sagely nodded his head in understanding. Here, have popsicles. Izuku pulled out a frozen ice cream and handed one to the explosion user, who smirked. It seems we are now enemy number one to a lot of people. Izuku laughed a bit while Bakugo laughed as well. They expect that their first day at UA would be a hassle, since they will be the center of attention from a lot of people, because no doubt, rumors will spread around very quickly. It's good that you two are aware of the consequences. Aizawa said, getting the attention of the two problem children, as he dubbed them. Either way, you both did quite well. You've embodied UA's motto of going plus ultra. I do hope you both continue with such an attitude. I second that. Ectoplasm interjected as well. Although I'd prefer if you stop antagonizing others. Ectoplasm looked directly in Izuku's eyes. It's good to have thick skin, but as heroes, you will be expected to work with others. So do get along with your future classmates. Ectoplasm encouraged him. I'm willing to work with others if needed. Izuku answered with a smile. The question is if they were willing to be professional and work with me regardless of their personal feelings towards me, or will they let their own emotions get in the way of the line of duty? If they're easily antagonized by mere verbal insults, then they don't deserve to be heroes. Bakugo added to Izuku's words. Villains will always aim to try and get under our skin. If a hero could be easily taunted, then they won't make the cut, especially in UA. I'm glad that two of my students already have a grasp of what it means to be a hero. Aizawa felt proud hearing this, even though he hadn't known them for long. They have much more common sense than all the others. This time he turned to look at Ectoplasm, who sighed. You both will be receiving your acceptance later shortly after, so make sure to be prepared. Ectoplasm offered those few words before he watched the two leave the school grounds with Izuku, lightly waving them goodbye. First day disaster. I don't look bad at all? Izuku smirked as he adjusted his UA school blazer. He contemplated for a moment just tossing away the red tie, since it will bring him unnecessary discomfort, but decided against it. If he doesn't like it, he can just remove it on the spot. Today is his first day at UA High as a Hero Core student of Class 1A. He had a lot of expectations for his next 3 years in school. He was confident in his capability in breezing through it all without any problem. For a moment, Izuku recalled the day when he received the result. It was less than just a week after the entrance exam that he received the UA acceptance letter. He didn't need to look at it to know that he passed. But he had nonetheless opened it with his mother being a witness, but she too knew he had passed. Aside from the neatly folded letter inside the envelope, a projector device had been placed inside as well, which activated on the spot. All Might had creepily made his appearance in the recorded footage while shouting something along the lines of, "This is a projection." Izuku was sure that All Might must have given many of the students who had received a letter from him a heart attack due to the jump scare. I mean, who in the world shoves their face close to the camera? That's literally asking to give people a heart attack. Apart from All Might's comical introduction, he started by congratulating him on passing the written exam with full marks, which he had easily expected since in terms of academics, he was considered to be a genius, not falling any short to Gohan. In regards to his practical score, he had a score near the 200s as he easily broke All Might's record. Considering that he destroyed all the robots in the city, it was expected that he would be the highest. In regards to the document inside the envelope, it talked about his assigned hero class, which was 1A under homeroom teacher Shoto Aizawa, whom he had met during the entrance exam. It had other information, such as a seat number, including his student ID card. In regards to his UA clothes, it's going to be mailed to him, but he had to give out the measurements so one could be made for him by the academy, which he took care of right away when he mailed in their official email written directly on the document. After that, he had to wait a few more weeks for the first term to start around the second week of April, which is during spring. This is why he stood with a smirk plastered on his face as he took pride in his achievements. Oh, how long do you plan to ogle yourself in the mirror? Inko asked from the door with a damnable smirk on her face while Izuku huffed. That aside, you do admittedly look good in the uniform, as expected of my genes. Inko laughed as she walked away. Izuku smiled nonetheless as she slung his backpack behind him. Izuku was not offended, as this was his mother's way of telling him that he does indeed look ravishing. She had to include herself in the compliment for humor, and it made his day. Izuku and Bakugo walked side by side, without any care in the world, as if they owned the entire place. Having come early by less than half an hour, they just walked in a relaxed manner, taking their time to navigate the many halls of the UA High. They came to a stop when they saw a large door with 1A engraved on the entire classroom door, vertically, with crimson red color. The door was quite gigantic, a clear display of UA's material wealth as to throw money on such expensive facilities. The door slid open, causing many eyes to fall on them. The entire class broke into hushed whispers, all which revolved entirely around both of them, who were the stars of the entrance exams. With Izuku being the one who broke the UA record. As expected, there were many emotions that could be felt from the rest of the class. Contempt, jealousy, distrust, neutrality, amazement, and curiosity. Izuku and Bakugo naturally ignored all of that and took their seats, which were right behind each other. "Excuse me." A voice seemed to pierce the chatter of the classroom as four eyes had closed the distance between him and Izuku. "I'm from Semi-Private Academy. My name is Tenya Ida." The now introduced Ida Tenya took the initiative to introduce himself to Izuku and break the tension in the air that was created from both Izuku and Bakugo walking in. Seeing this, Izuku's lips curled into a smirk. He did not particularly have anything against him. "I'm from Aldra Junior High." Izuku started before pointing at Bakugo as well with his thumb. "Actually, we both come from the same school. My name is Izuku Midoriya." Izuku introduced himself with a smile, making Ida's lips part into a smile. Many seemed to be particularly surprised that he returned the greeting back. It was natural that people would have the impression that Izuku and Bakugo are both arrogant and unapproachable, a clear result of both their overwhelming power they displayed in the entrance exam. "I'm definitely arrogant to some extent, but I'm not unfriendly," Izuku thought as he shook the hand of Ida, who seemed to be happy that he managed to make a hopefully better second impression after having ruined his first impression at the exams. "I'd like to first apologize for the way we started in the exams." Ida sighed as he remembered one of his embarrassing moments. "I do hope we could build a good rapport between us as we're going to be classmates for the next 3 years. You don't need to apologize to me. Tensions were quite high at the time, so I don't fault you for being on the edge." Izuku forgave him. "I also would like that we get along as well for the foreseeable future, and even after we graduate together." Ida smiled even more. Some of the skepticism permeating the air had been dispelled as some had made their way to Izuku to also introduce themselves to him. "My name is Ejiro Kirishima," the teen with dyed red hair shouted in a rather passionate voice. "I've heard how you destroyed All Might's entrance exams record. That's pretty manly." Kirishima flashed him a thumbs up along with a toothy grin. "My name is Mina Ishido." A pink-skinned girl butted in before Izuku could get the chance to answer, introducing herself rather cheerfully. "You're already in the spotlight on the first day. You're pretty amazing." Mina had laughed as she patted him on the back. A few came forward to introduce themselves to Izuku, clearly driven by the enthusiasm of the two energetic classmates. Izuku managed to keep up with all the introductions and answered them with a smile on his face, getting all of them to be more comfortable around him. Naturally, everything wasn't all smooth. Some of the other seated students just simply opted in giving him a simple nod, as if to say they acknowledge him, but at the same time, they still don't trust him enough to approach him and talk to him. It was fine for Izuku. He didn't expect to befriend the entire class right away. Such a thing takes a bit of time, especially after the disaster of the entrance exams that obviously made some detest him or just view him as a selfish and self-centered asshole. After that, everyone seemed to return to their seats. Izuku noted two other people that had been in the same battle center as him, such as the French-looking teen and the brown-haired girl. The latter had been shooting him looks of contempt, which then soon morphed into neutrality. Izuku, who had a powerful photographic memory, remembered that she had been among those who had been very nervous. He could vividly remember her doing a sort of breathing technique. After he destroyed all the robots in the city in an instant, she had been among those who collapsed in despair and fainted from panic attack. From the looks of it, she had properly recovered and took the exams and passed it. Good for her. I don't blame her for her contempt. Izuku mused, clearly not bothered by her distaste towards him. His action was selfish even if he had justifiable cause for what he did. Besides, not everyone can be forgiving like Ida, who had let it go and took the initiative in conversing with him. Today, they're supposed to have their entrance ceremony in which Nizu will formally welcome them to their new school life at UA High. After that, they still had their guidance session where they will receive their curriculum for the first semester and other related documents. Well, color me surprised. A voice seemed to pierce the silence in the class as everyone tensely turned to find a head sticking out of a yellow sleeping bag. I was expecting that you guys would be rowdy on your first day, but I guess this year's class is rational. A hand stuck out of the sleeping bag as he revealed a jelly drink packet and proceeded to suck it dry in an instant, startling almost everyone. After doing so, Aizawa then removed himself from the sleeping bag. I won't waste any time, since time is valuable. Aizawa fully emerged from the sleeping bag with a haggard, "I'm your homeroom teacher for the foreseeable future, which is the next 3 years. My name is Shota Aizawa. I am pleased to meet you." The introduction was rather bland, as everyone tensed once more with a few exceptions. After determining that he got everyone's attention to him, he then took to shuffling through his yellow sleeping bag and pulled a PE uniform out of it. "Quickly now, change in your gym clothes and head out to the grounds," he ordered, which both Izuku and Bakugo had done without question, followed by a two-tone hair-colored girl. Seeing this, everyone snapped out of the shock and quickly rushed to follow their lead. "It seems those three are going to be the leaders of the class," Aizawa had muttered as he slowly walked outside the classroom and into the grounds. It did not surprise him one bit. Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo both broke All Might's record, with Midoriya taking the lead in the first place and Bakugo in the second place. Todoroki, on the other hand, is not only among the recommended students, but she is also the daughter of the number 2 pro Hero Endeavor. She equally, to some extent, dominated the recommendation exams and only fell short compared to Momo Yaoyorozu in terms of written exam scores, and also fell short to Inasa Yurashi, who scored first in the 3-kilometer-long obstacle course. It's a shame that he had foregoed his own acceptance at UA and instead had joined Shiketsu. Aizawa sighed, but it was for the better. Someone like that, who is easy to emotionally provoke, does not deserve to be a hero at UA. He did us all a favor. Inasa Yurashi had a powerful quirk called Whirlwind, which grants him the ability to freely manipulate the air around him over a very wide area. He had been among the top scorers, but because the daughter of Endeavor had just rudely brushed him off, he ended up holding a grudge and dropped out. Aizawa scoffed when he saw it. Other staff members were more disappointed at the loss of a potential student, but he was happy. Good riddance. If he came here to UA just to make friends, then he should leave and bother another hero school. Aizawa's lips flashed into a smirk when he saw Izuku and Bakugo standing at the grounds wearing their PE clothes and ready for the exercise. The others had yet to still come out, but he was in a good mood. "A test of our quirks?" Many from among the 20 students of Class 1A had collectively shouted in shock. After they all came down to the ground, Aizawa had wasted no time in getting to the point of what they will be doing today. This had naturally come as a shock to many of the students. "What about the entrance ceremony? Or guidance sessions?" the brown-haired girl rapidly asked. "No time to waste on that stuff if you want to become heroes," Aizawa replied with a bored voice before his eyes narrowed to the class. UA is known for its freestyle educational system. That applies to us teachers as well. This naturally got almost everyone on edge at his words. After that, Aizawa got to explain the Quirk Apprehension test, which all of them had done back at their middle school, but without a quirk, partly because society itself has strict regulation on quirks. The Quirk Apprehension test consists of the following: softball throwing, the standing long jump, the 50-meter dash, endurance running, grip strength and side-to-side stepping, upper body training, and seated toe touch. This time, he wanted the class to do them, but with a quirk, hence the name. Midoriya, Aizawa called abruptly seconds later after he finished criticizing the Department of Education for procrastinating and being overall irrational. "How far could you throw in middle school?" he asked. 145 meters. Izuku answered. Truthfully, he could throw higher than this in his base power without powering up using ki. The 145 meters had been his score at the time, when he held back a lot in order to avoid looks, albeit he did still get a lot of looks. "Great. Now try it with your quirk." Aizawa's expression remained unchanged even after hearing the actual score, which is admittedly very impressive. "Do whatever you need to. Just don't leave the circle." Izuku caught the ball in hand as he went forward inside the circle. Everyone aside from Bakugo were on the edge. Now they get to witness with their own eyes the power of the one who broke the entrance exam record and scored first in both written and practical exams. Izuku took a deep breath as he let his ki flow outside his body. A green ki surrounded his entire body, causing winds to blow fiercely. His eyes changed, with his sclera turning pitch black as the void, his iris turning green in color with a black slit in his pupil. Everyone held their breath. Even Bakugo is curious about how this is going to end. The entire ball was coated with his ki in order to eliminate the friction so that the ball wouldn't burn to ash if he threw it with a bit of force. He took a pitcher stance. "Here I go," Izuku whispered, but his voice seemed to carry on, reverberating through the bodies of everyone. Before long, he threw the ball with more force than usual. The result was disastrous, as he had expected, as the ball had shot to the sky like a green meteorite. The shockwave spread all over the entire UA campus, nearly shattering all of the glasses in the entire campus had Izuku not exercised some bit of restraint. He didn't want to pay reparation for damages to UA's property, so he had held back a bit. Crack! A sickening crack reverberated around, as everyone, including Aizawa, looked at the sky with a great deal of shock, seeing a hole in the air, or rather a hole in the space. Izuku had broken the dimensional wall separating the mortal realm and the afterlife realm. This got to be a joke, right? A Pikachu ripoff whispered, but nobody dared to say anything as they witnessed the spectacle before them. The afterlife is separated into two levels that would be heaven and hell. It was the only two main destinations for deceased people. However, there is also a level that exists between the two. Izuku's ball tore through two of the dimensional walls as if they were made of glass. The ball had first entered hell, where all the condemned souls are sent there to repent for their sins, before it continued forward like a comet and just entered the Snake Way path where Emma Palace resides. The ball pushed forward towards the direction of King Kai's planet. Goku, who had been training earnestly for the tournament, sensed the familiar ki of Izuku and looked up to see a green star coming towards him at a blinding speed, with the intention to turn the entire small planet of King Kai uninhabitable. So, Izuku wants to play catch again? Goku grinned as he took a stance so he could receive the ball. The green star immediately impacted him, sending him skidding halfway through the entire planet and damaging King Kai's lawn. "My lawn!" King Kai tearfully and comically screeched as he saw his damaged lawn and crumbled tearfully. Those damn Saiyans, they have no respect for people's property. The dimensional hole created from Izuku's throw naturally closed on the spot right after it got pierced. It was a harmless throw, and he had minded his own throw. It certainly wasn't his first time doing this, and he got away with it all the time. If anything, the people up there enjoyed it very much, since it was a change from their boring, everyday bureaucratic life. "I've caught it, Izuku," a voice seems to echo in the minds of everyone in the training ground. It was telepathy. Bakugo's eyes immediately shot wide open as he realized what Izuku had done and looked at him with shock. "Nice catch, uncle," Izuku shouted to the sky with a thumbs up. Nobody had dared to say anything. Everyone, including Aizawa, held their breath, not even daring to make any abrupt move before he turned towards them, making some flinch from fear. I'm not getting paid enough for this," Aizawa muttered. He didn't want to even know what happened. "Your score is immeasurable." The device couldn't calculate that absurd throw. Aizawa sighed as he showed the device that has the word immeasurable written on it. The stupid ones didn't understand the magnitude of Izuku's action. The smart ones tried to rationalize what Izuku had done. There is no way that a first-year student had torn through the dimensional wall of their universe so casually. It must be some sort of spatial-type quirk, Yaoyorozu muttered, being heard by those close to her. He must have connected two spaces together while tossing the ball inside it to another undisclosed location. She said a bit more loudly. Everyone aside from Bakugo nodded their heads fervently, clearly agreeing with her deduction. That was the only logical answer. If he is truly capable of tearing through dimensional wall, then that would make their classmate the most dangerous individual on the planet. "Wow, you figured part of my quirk out," Izuku said with a smile which made everyone look at him. "If I could calculate the coordination precisely, I could manipulate my quirk to open a sort of wormhole to another location. I'm not that good at it as of yet." "I see. That does make sense." Yaoyorozu seems to sigh in relief and smile in clear happiness in getting it right, and also for receiving praise from one of her classmates. "That is an impressive throw, Midoriya-san." She complimented him, which he accepted. Everyone seemed to finally calm down and laughed. Aizawa hadn't scolded them, and instead let them relax a bit. He let out a sigh and narrowed his eyes a bit at Izuku. He didn't expect this. Izuku's quirk is incomprehensible. At the start, many believed that Izuku had a sort of powerful telekinesis-type quirk or some sort of gravity-type quirk. But all that changed at the moment. He didn't know if Izuku was lying or not, but if he took his words seriously, does that mean it's a spatial-type quirk? The latter sounded more plausible, but he imagined that there is more to his quirk than meets the eyes. He tried racking his brain over it for a while, and then he gave up. He was going to check on Izuku's student profile to get a bit of a grasp on his quirk. That's pretty manly, Midoriya bro. Kirishima cheered for Izuku as the latter walked towards the group of students, receiving pats at the back from many of his own classmates for his throw. It was obvious that many were pretty excited and pumped. This is awesome. Mina cheered loudly, throwing both her hands up in the air in clear celebration with a few imitating her. Many had wholeheartedly agreed with Mina. The Hero Association did have a lot of strict laws when it comes to quirk usage, so getting to use one was a great change. Awesome, you say? Aizawa asked, his voice coming out as a whisper. It looked like Mina and the others had just touched a nerve. A heavy aura had descended on everyone, getting almost everyone to feel chills as they turned to look at their homeroom teacher. You're hoping to become heroes after 3 years here? Aizawa narrowed his eyes at them, making many to gulp in clear fear. And you think it'll be all fun and games? He asked ominously. Right, the one with the lowest score across all 8 events will be judged to be hopeless. Aizawa paused, his weary eyes raised, looking directly at his students. And will be expelled. Aizawa concludes as his lips parted into a sinister grin. What? Many of the students shouted with great deal of shock as the callous words of their homeroom teacher echoed through the desolate training ground they were in. This signaled the start of yet another test that will determine their very fate in this school. Your fates are in our hands. Aizawa spoke sinisterly as he pulled the bangs of his hair upward to show his eyes that seemed to glow faintly red. Welcome, this is the hero course at UA High, Aizawa had revealed, resulting in a bit of a shock with Izuku and Bakugo grinning, accepting the challenge. Conclusion: the lowest scorer will be expelled? Uraraka asked in clear panic. It was obvious that she wasn't confident in being able to breeze through the test like some of her other unreasonably overpowered classmates. It's only the first day. I mean, even if it weren't. That's totally unfair, she shouted. Her words seemed to resonate with many of the students with non-combat type quirk, or those whose quirk is not strong. Since those are physical fitness that relies on quirk, it will come down to those with physical enhancement type of quirk and those with overpowered or conveniently useful quirks. Natural disasters, highway pileups, rampaging villains. Aizawa listed a few of the common unfairness of their world. Calamity is always right around the corner. I'd say Japan is full of unfair things. Aizawa answered with a very bored voice. Heroes are the ones who correct all that unfairness. Aizawa let his bangs fall down and let out a sigh. If you were all hoping to spend your evening hanging out at McDonald's, I'm sorry to tell you that for the next 3 years, UA will run you through the ringer. That's plus ultra. Aizawa smirked at the class. Use your strength in order to overcome it all. So bring it. Aizawa made a come motion with his finger as he encouraged all of them to give it their all in order to maintain their position in his class and at UA. It's an obviously rigged test that favors individuals with a quirk suited for this. Izuku laughed in his head. The entrance exam was a clear indication that UA is not going to play fair. Although, Aizawa, or rather Eraserhead, is likely just doing this to get the others to take this seriously. He mused with interest. His new classmates seemed to treat this hero gig half-heartedly. Aizawa probably did not like such an attitude at the start of the very first day, which is why he is trying to stomp on it early on. The Quirk Apprehension test had gone on rather smoothly, if you were willing to ignore how completely unreasonably overpowered both Izuku and Bakugo are, as they dominated the entire test, shattering many UA records as if it were just a video game. They couldn't be properly measured. Aizawa let out a tired sigh, feeling the urge to let out a groan. They broke existing UA records, and I could tell they were taking it easy. Aizawa was starting to think that both Izuku and Bakugo were going to be the very death of him, One of these days, the UA robot stationed at each part of the 8 exercises were meant to capture, record, and calculate the scores of the students. Unfortunately, the UA robots had just learned today of its limits as it failed at each exercise to measure those 2 monsters. Bakugo had fallen short to Izuku when it came to the final exercise, which is the softball throw, since thankfully this time around, it seemed that his device had at least managed to record his score, and much to the shock of everyone, Bakugo had launched the ball through the moon, and on the other side. "Those 2 are monsters," Kaminari complained as he wiped the sweat off his chin, feeling himself growing very tired to continue, but the threat of being expelled kept him from surrendering to his instinct. "How do we even compete with those 2? "We don't," Jiro replied with a scoff at his words, as if he said something stupid. "There is no way anyone in this class could ever compete with those 2. Let's just hope we pass first and worry later." She grumbled with frustration. "Q, why is this world so unfair to people like us?" Mineta grumbled as he shot hateful looks towards the 2 disaster duos who were treating everything as a game. "Not only are they your typical good-looking Bishounen, but they are also OP." Mineta grumbles loudly. "Eamon." Siro agreed wholeheartedly with the midget who was envious of the 2 for their very good looks. "They're like your main characters from your typical shonen series." It was a sentiment that is closely shared by a few of his classmates. Everyone chatted amongst each other about the 2 duo, while Aizawa just looked at the recording device in his hand as it calculated all of the recorded scores of the students and then ranked them from the highest scorer to the lowest scorer. "Quiet down, all of you." Aizawa's voice pierced through the hushed voices of the students. "Moving along. Time for the results." Aizawa pressed a button in the device, causing a holographic image to appear showing the scores. Izuku Midoriya, Katsuki Bakugo, Momo Yaoyorozu. The last person turned out to be a boy named Minoru Mineta. Izuku looked at him and sighed in amusement since the boy was like Master Rashi. He would not be surprised if he turned out to be some distant relative. That is, if Rashi even had a family of his own to begin with. "Also, I was lying about expelling someone," Aizawa revealed after having just waited to see the reaction of everyone. "That was a rational deception meant to bring out the best in all of you." He laughed with a creepy grin on his face that was unsettling to many. "Wait. A few in the class vocalized their shock through a scream. It was unexpected to many while obvious to some of the others. "Well, of course it was a lie." Yaoyorozu sighed as she shot a disbelieving look at the others for not realizing this. "Didn't take much to figure that out." "Nah." Izuku refuted her words. "According to the upperclassmen, our seniors, Aizawa-sensei had a streak of expelling many students in the past." Izuku just dropped a bomb out of nowhere. "He apparently expelled an entire class last year because they didn't make the cut." Izuku continued with an amused chuckle. "So, I wouldn't get comfortable if I were you. He didn't expel anyone this time around because we lived up to his standards for now at least." This came as a shocking revelation to many who heard him. It also didn't help that Aizawa never denied his words. If anything, their homeroom teacher only grinned further, causing the fear that had just subsided seconds ago to once again reignite in their hearts. "That means you all can't afford to be mediocre." It was Bakugo who spoke this time around. "If you end up performing poorly this year or this semester, your seats will simply be swiped from right underneath your legs and just be given to someone else from another course who is more deserving." Easy for the 2 of you to say that. Ojiro complained in a low voice as both of his classmates are far superior to all of them combined. Despite his voice being a whisper, he was heard by the 2 with Bakugo simply ignoring him, but Izuku didn't. Consider it a friendly piece of advice from a classmate. Izuku looked directly in Ojiro's eyes, who quickly flinched upon realizing that he was heard. "As long as you give it your all, I think you'll be safe, but that depends." Everyone in the class went quiet as they tried to grapple with a new piece of information. The revelation had meant they were not completely safe so far. At any moment, their seats as heroic students of Class 1A could be just as easily taken from them on the whims of their cruel and sadistic homeroom teacher. Yaoyorozu had quickly deflated upon realizing that she had nearly given her classmates a fake sense of security, which could have been very costly to the low performer and those who would have inevitably let their guard down due to being lured by her words. "Anyway, we're done here." Aizawa spoke once more, having not confirmed nor denied Izuku's words. "Your documents about the curriculum and such are in the back of the classroom. Give them a look." He nonchalantly just turned around and left. Everyone seems to whisper amongst each, discussing the disaster that is their very first day at UA High. There were those that were naturally excited about the next 3 years at UA, and those that felt like they might end up falling off the hero course. Midoriya-san. Yaoyorozu called out to the green-haired half-breed Saiyan who turned to her. I'd like to thank you for correcting me. She lowered her head slightly. I can't imagine how I'd feel if one of my classmates were to be expelled due to giving them a false sense of security. It's quite fine, Izuku casually replied back. You didn't know. I was just lucky that I've done research prior to getting into UA. I do know some senior student here at UA who gave me the warning. Izuku comforted her, which seemed to do the trick since her face brightened up. You're far nicer than what I've heard about you, Yaoyorozu said awkwardly and somewhat cautiously. The rumors about the entrance exam had spread around, so I apologize as well for assuming wrong about you. She apologized once more. Again, it's fine really. Izuku wasn't really bothered. I could understand why others would hate me. I knew the consequences of my actions, and I decided to take responsibility for them, Izuku admitted, which seemed to finally put her at ease. That's an admirable quality to have, Midoriya-san. Ito interjected into the conversation, commending Izuku for his attitude. I will also strive to be the best as well, Ida said rather seriously, making Izuku sweat drop and sigh. From the corner of Izuku's peripheral vision, one person seems to particularly stare at Izuku with more interest. Aside from her two-toned hair both red and white, she also had a mismatched eye blue and gray. This is the daughter of the number 2 pro Hero Endeavor. Those two are strong, she thought coldly. She hadn't expected to meet 2 actual people who possess such fine control over their quirk and could cause such damage. The fact that they broke UA records as if they were collecting pebbles from the street unnerved her. She knew without a shadow of a doubt that not even her old man could ever beat them, let alone one of them in a 1v1. What intrigued her the most is that while it almost looked like the two are neck to neck in terms of power, but she knew better. He is stronger and by a large margin. Shoko mused as she looked at Izuku directly. The robots simply couldn't measure their scores because they were on a higher level. Even then, Shoko was not scared nor discouraged by today. It only meant that she now had a clear target. If she could beat Izuku using only her ice side that she inherited from her mother, she could finally prove to her old man that she didn't need his fire quirk. I will defeat you, Izuku Midoriya, she vowed. Oh, hey guys! Gohan waved as he then rushed a bit faster to catch up to both Izuku and Bakugo, who were walking ahead of the UA gates. Wait up! Both Disaster Duo paused in their steps, allowing Gohan to catch up to them. How was your first day in Class 1B? Izuku asked curiously. He had heard that Gohan had ended up in their sister class, 1B. Unlike them, Gohan had held back significantly during the entrance exam and scored just enough to get a pass at UA. Izuku didn't know how to feel about this. If Gohan had at least tried, he would have gotten a pass at 1A. Even Vegeta had scoffed when he also heard that Gohan was trying to act all weak by holding back just to blend in with the other humans. It was all right. Gohan chuckled lightly, remembering some of the hassle he got. I didn't see you guys during the orientation. What happened? Gohan asked as he changed the subject. Our homeroom teacher decided that orientation was just a waste of time and held a quirk apprehension test. The last person in the scoreboard will quickly be expelled. Katsuki didn't sugarcoat his words, shocking Gohan. Wow, that's a tad bit extreme. Gohan freaked out upon hearing this and felt an odd sense of relief for having such an understanding homeroom teacher. Did someone really get expelled? He asked worriedly, clearly feeling pity for the one who'd end up last. Nah, no one got expelled this time around, Izuku revealed. Aizawa-sensei was content with our potential so far. He would have expelled the last place or anyone if he deemed them to have zero potential, so they are safe for the time being, Izuku said with a nonchalant tone. Gohan went silent as they collectively walked together to the train station. It was a bit awkward for Gohan, who decided that he couldn't bear the silence and tried to start a topic. Did you know the daughter of Mr. Satan is actually part of Class 1B? Her name is Videl Satan. Gohan dropped a bomb out of nowhere, which caused the two to pause abruptly in their steps and turn to him with a great deal of shock and anger. That fraud has a daughter? Katsuki yelled, getting attention from everyone around them at the train station. Gohan freaked out as he brought his finger to his lips and tried to shush the two, but he failed since the two are now angry at the revelation. So someone can actually tolerate marrying a clown like that, Izuku said with clear surprise. So what's she like? The daughter of that fraud? Izuku was curious, as he didn't deign to call her by her name. Izuku and Bakugo both held immense amounts of contempt towards the world martial arts champion. The man had wisely chosen to retire from the hero field in fear that his lies would be aired out if he is forced to fight a villain who is far stronger than him. The man continued to host martial arts tournaments and the like. The rest of his time is spent with him laughing like a clown while bragging about his great victory over Cell all the damn time, and even going as far as to insult them, the Z Warriors, as well as make fun of his uncle's death. Gohan might have the capacity to forgive and maybe forget, but Izuku was not one to forgive that easily. Bakugo not only hated Hercules, but also hated how the entire world seemed to give a clown like that the power to behave the way he does. They have no one to blame but themselves for getting scammed and fooled for 7 years straight. One day, the secret that Satan tried to push under a rug will spill out, and he won't be able to salvage his reputation while also dragging his daughter alongside him to hell. Her name is Videl. Gohan vehemently corrected the two, which earned him a scoff from the two. That aside, she is not bad. She is a tad bit forceful. He laughed awkwardly. But I think she is not a bad person. I'm sure you wouldn't mind her if you met her. Do you like her or something? Izuku asked with a sigh, which had resulted in Gohan's face turning beet red, completely flustered by the accusation thrown out of nowhere. Oh God, it's only been less than half a day, and you're just already getting the hots for her. You have quite the low standards, nerdy boy. Bakugo scoffed. I don't really get how you Saiyans think, but even if you act pathetically, I believe you should choose better. Bakugo reprimanded. Before Gohan could try to come up with a rebuttal, the ashy blonde teen just continued. I agree with you that no child should be held accountable to their parents' sins. Bakugo sighed. But I also believe that we are the products of our own environment. Bakugo believed that Videl, having been forced to hang around such a person, will inevitably develop some screw loose along with it. Given what Gohan had just revealed about her, it looked like she had been harassing him on their first day at school. I second that. Izuku agreed wholeheartedly with his best friend. You've said it yourself, she's obviously harassing you in some way on your first day at UA, didn't she? Izuku turned to look at the black eyes of Gohan, who turned away because it was true. It's not like it's her fault. Gohan pitifully defended her. I had just stopped a robbery this morning since the heroes weren't around, and so I transformed into SSJ to hide my identity. Gohan paused before he continued. She had naturally heard about the rumors and started to suspect you. Bakugo interjected with a scoff. What did you expect, dipshit? In the first place, why are you even risking exposure? He reprimanded, making the black-haired hybrid flinch once more because it was true. He should have known better. We agreed that we won't use Super Saiyan, and for an actual good reason. It was Izuku's turn to reprimand him. Logically speaking, the Super Saiyan forms are just too much. We're not trying to turn the entire galaxy into space dust, so accessing such a form is overkill. Despite saying this, it's unlikely for them to destroy the galaxy, because they had that much control over their transformation, but dealing with the grunts is different from the threats they all collectively faced in the past. For instance, many of the small fry villains that heroes deal with barely could destroy a single building. For him who, mind you, is in his base form, he could lightly brush his knuckles on a building and it will topple to the side and cause a domino effect in where all buildings will topple, as well causing a disaster. Imagine what would happen if he was to transform to SSJ, or God forbid SSJ2. He could literally sneeze half of Japan, if not all of Japan, into oblivion. This is why one has to exercise restraint in this kind of scenario, hence why Izuku had been annoyed with Gohan. The most troublesome part is the fact that the world will easily recognize us as the ones from 7 years ago. Izuku clenched his fist. We don't really need that kind of attention, especially considering that Fool had made us out as the frauds instead. Many of the Z Warriors and those related to them wished for peace. Some just needed space to mourn their own losses, Goku's sacrifice. An example of that would be the Sun family. More so Gohan, who feels responsible for his father's death, given that he played around with Cell instead of finishing him off. Some preferred to maintain their privacy for one reason or another, either due to the fact they just detest the very idea of being thrusted into the limelight like Piccolo, Android 18, Vegeta, and the like. Some prefer their privacy because it will endanger their own families, kind of like Krillin, who had married 18 and had a daughter with her, and as such didn't want his family to be under constant 24/7 harassment by the media. Overall, many just wanted to live normally. Cell and the androids were our responsibility, Izuku thought. Or rather, it was Uncle Goku who brought about their very birth, but as his family and friends, it was also something we need to take care of. Cell and the androids were the result of Dr. Gero's desires to get revenge on Son Goku for the destruction of the Red Ribbon Army decades ago, when Goku used to be an uncontrollable wild child. In that sense, those monsters were their responsibility. Goku had realized his own faults as well as his contribution for creating such monsters and decided to stay in the afterlife so that those who bear grudges against him won't come looking for him on Earth. Hence, this is why Earth has been peaceful for 7 years. They won, and as such they've returned back to their normal day-to-day lives because this was their collective wish. They didn't fight to get people to sing praises for them, nor did they fight for the sake of money or any of that utter nonsense. It's why they chose to let Satan get away with his stunts. They were making use of him as a pawn. Even if the secret is revealed to the entire world, they could let Satan take the fall and blame him for everything, but the revelation of the man having a daughter did change some things. If the secret is revealed, there is no doubt that this Videl chick will take the fall alongside her irresponsible old man. Izuku thought with a bit of bitterness. He was in a current impasse. On one hand, he didn't care that much since he didn't know her long enough for it to bother him, so it was not his problem. Izuku is the type of person who believes in taking responsibility for one's actions, so Hercules will eventually have to learn it. But on the moral side, Izuku felt pity for her. If it's to be assumed that she is as clueless as everyone else, then she is as much of a victim as the rest. She will definitely be seen as an accomplice to her father's schemes. This is not a very pleasant thing. I am sorry. Gohan offered a weak apology as he got reprimanded by the two, and he knew his mother would also do the same thing, and worse if she heard about his reckless action. She will probably pull on his ears while chewing him out right directly in them. He knew he was in the wrong. There was no need for him to have involved himself in a petty bank robbery where the life of citizens wasn't really that in danger since no one died or hurt badly. The pro heroes were also around the corner, so they would have handled it. Be more careful the next time around, Izuku said. This Videl woman you're so infatuated with seems like the type who has a bad habit of sticking her own nose into other people's business. Izuku's lips curled into amusement as he saw Gohan flustered. When you've lived a life being at the bottom of the food chain, you're bound to develop envy towards those sitting at the top. There will also be undoubtedly a desire to also be among them. Such was the man Hercules Satan, who dreamt of being at the top. Now that he had become one of the wealthiest and influential men around the globe, it had meant that everything that had once been impossible for Satan to afford are now something he could buy. His daughter is no exception. Her father must have spoiled her to the fullest extent, and with everyone showering her with praises for being related to him, she must have likely developed an ego and a sense of entitlement that she is above even the laws. Izuku's instinct had told him that Videl Satan is going to be headache-inducing, and he didn't like it one bit. If Videl were to one day overstep her boundaries, he will put her in her place. Hero, basic training. No wonder I got told to not get my hopes up. Izuku grumbled as the second day came by, and they were having completely normal classes. It should have been naturally expected as UA is still a high school, and education in Japan is both highly valued and seen as important. Even then, it felt really boring and so normal. Everything they were teaching was something he knew about when he was only a child, since he got forced once into a study group with Gohan by Chi-Chi. His mother didn't particularly mind at the time, as long as Chi-Chi didn't overstep her boundaries. In hindsight, the only reason why his mom at the time had let this slide is due to her pride as a high-class Saiyan warrior. Contrary to others' impressions of Saiyans, education is surprisingly very valued in Planet Vegeta. They weren't all simple brutes. In fact, his mom used to be an assistant scientist back on Planet Vegeta when she was young and would have been promoted to one of the lead scientists if the planet didn't get destroyed by Frieza. So naturally, as her son, he learned a lot from her. Another reason why his mom allowed the study group is because she wanted him to prove his superiority over Kakarot's low-class spawn, which he did very easily at that since unlike Gohan, he had studied in a smart way rather than in a stupid way. Study smart, not hard. Izuku mused as he picked a tray of food after a boring class with present Mike, who was their English teacher. He felt his head ringing slightly from having to hear the hero speak loudly. That hero bastard had no utter consideration for those with sensitive hearing like himself. The girl with earjacks constantly twitches every time present Mike started to shout, as well as that big guy with a mask covering his mouth and nose who would shift in his seat at times in clear discomfort. "You ate less than normal," Bakugo pointed out in clear surprise. It's true, he had been very considerate in not emptying the entire food supply. Then again, even if he were to do this, it's doubtful that lunch rush would allow him to eat this much since there are other students that need to eat. "I ate in the morning before I came to school," Izuku revealed. "If I were to eat like I normally do, no one would have a single thing to eat." Izuku chuckled in amusement. You also can't afford to make even more enemies than you already have." Bakugo smirked. Even now, students from other courses seemed to not so subtly look at them. It didn't bother either of the two. None of them were a threat. Assuming that some of them were to try something against them, there were obviously hidden cameras all over the cafeteria, along with eyewitnesses that would testify against their attackers. That is, if everyone present didn't turn out to be in cahoots with them. "Maybe you're right," Izuku laughed. "Or maybe I don't want to subject others to me eating." Izuku smirked. Bakugo understood. Saiyans have naturally fast metabolism, and that is only made worse whenever they are done training, so they eat much more. Bakugo himself had bore witness to Saiyans eating. It made him feel queasy, and he lost appetite. He had long since adapted to those abnormal aliens, but others wouldn't have developed resistance, and there is no doubt that they will vomit. "Yeah." Bakugo scrunched his nose in disgust. "Even though I say I've gotten used to Saiyans eating, I still don't think I will ever fully be able to get used to it." He dug his fork into the piece of steak to eat it. Bakugo was grateful that Inko, his aunt, had taught her son table manners. He had heard about Goku from others, and from what he heard and seen from the video clips, the man looked like he was giving the meat a deep throat. It really was disturbing to watch. There were even some nasty rumors among the circle of the Z fighters that Goku once used a piece of meat to brush his teeth with because he couldn't be bothered to buy a toothbrush, and even rinsed his mouth using a soup. It was so disgusting that Goku had his face used as a punching bag by his wife, who was embarrassed at the barbaric action of her husband who had looked unremorseful. "Aha!" Izuku laughed as he saw Katsuki's face turn green. "Is that really appropriate for you to think about this when you're eating?" Izuku doubled in laughter even more as Bakugo had lost his appetite just from thinking about Goku eating. Lunchtime had finally ended, pushing forward to their afternoon class's hero basic training. While everyone in the class is pondering over who their heroic class teacher would be, Izuku already had an idea. As he was well connected, he knew who it was. "I have." A loud, booming voice from outside was heard, followed by heavy running footsteps. "Come through the door like normal." The large door of the class was abruptly opened as All Might made his flashy entrance wearing his Silver Age costume. "How is that normal?" Both Izuku and Bakugo shared the same thought. The others burst out in excited cheers at the sight of the symbol of peace coming to their class in person. Even Ida, who is serious about the school rules and reprimanded anyone that had slighted it, didn't say anything about All Might running in the hallway of the school. Instead, his expression seemed to brighten considerably. Everyone had something to say to this scene. Izuku and Bakugo didn't have much to say about this, but it was undeniable that they both had a great deal of respect for that man who dedicated decades of hero work for Japan. Even if that fraud had still remained as a hero, he wouldn't be able to outrank the symbol of peace. Izuku firmly thought in his head. The most he would be able to achieve is a number 2. All Might had been around for many decades. He had been instrumental in stabilizing Japan in the past when villains rampaged freely. It was due to his presence that the crime rate in Japan had lowered to the 1 digit, unlike in the past. In hindsight, All Might's great success in the hero field had been to an extent possible with the Z fighters who had dealt with a great threat like the Demon King Piccolo and the Red Ribbon Army, who in the past had nearly taken over the entire world. It's undeniable that he is a great hero worthy of respect. Izuku thought. In the past, he used to idolize the man for his achievements. While he had outgrown this phase in his life, he still held respect for the old hero, but he had found the man to be extremely eccentric and disturbing to some extent. This became clear when All Might stood in front of the podium while doing a kneeling double bicep as if he was in a Mr. Olympia contest. This caused the two teens to cringe a bit, but they had no right to criticize the man since they were also eccentric. Hero, basic training, All Might said while still maintaining his kneeling double bicep. The class that'll put you through all sorts of special training to mold you into heroes. No time to dally. Today's activity is this. All Might shouted as he finally pulled a card with Battle engraved on it in bold. Battle training, he revealed with a bright smile on his face, sending the entire class into a frenzy of cheers as all were excited. And for that, you need these. All Might pressed the remote control, causing the hidden compartment shelf to open up from the side of the walls to reveal 20 briefcases where their respective hero suites are inside, causing great awe among the class. In accordance with the Quirk registry and the special request forms you filled out before being admitted, All Might said before he then paused for a while for that flare. Costumes, he shouted, causing many of the class to stand up to cheer. After you change, come out in ranking order in ground beta. All Might then concluded his speech with a great smile, while receiving shouts of approval from many of his students, while others just simply chose to give a nod as if to acknowledge his words. This is very convenient. Izuka hummed in a pleased voice as he tapped a red button in the smartwatch, causing his hero suit to appear directly onto his body instantly without the need to change. That I agree. Bakugo agreed as he too received the same watch, but with a different color. Izuka's watch is a mix between green and black, while his on the other hand was a mix between black and orange. The transformation watch is one of Bulma's many creations. Izuku could have naturally made one of his own as long as he had the necessary material, but since Gohan requested one for himself, Bulma decided to make one for all of them at the same time. The materials for their hero costumes are made with the latest technology that Bulma could offer, so it was top quality. It was specifically also tailored for both of them, so it was going to last longer compared to those damn charlatans who call themselves support companies, but really, they were just scammers. All Might looked surprised when he saw the two just walking out to meet him. That was fast. The symbol of peace looked surprised, and thus had forgotten his earlier word about coming out in ranking order. It's because of this wristwatch. Izuka pointed at the wristwatch while tapping on the screen rather lightly, causing All Might to gain a look of recognition as he noticed the logo. Capsule Corporation. All Might exclaimed in surprise as he was familiar with the high quality that the Brief family produced. You boys must be either rich or pretty well connected to be able to get yourself a support item made by them. All Might flashed a smile. All Might had actually received some items from them in the past, but he had mostly stuck to the items made by his best friend David Shield. You can call him whatever you like, but he All Might wouldn't betray his friend by going to another support company even if they were the Capsule Corporation. Even then, he had to admit the Brief family is legendary. They've taken total control over the economy of the world due to their very first invention, which is the Dino Cap, capable of storing just about anything that isn't human, such as a house, car, airplane, etc. The Dino Cap was so revolutionary that it became essential. Just by storing anything inside those small yet easy-to-carry capsules, one could save a lot of money that could have been wasted on transportation, the gas fuel, as well as even preventing traffic jams. So every business-related company and governments in the world needed the permission of the Brief family to use their Dino Cap. As no one could replicate them, it meant that the Briefs literally monopolized the entire market. So if the Briefs were to ever impose sanctions on their products, it would be a nightmare for the world. It did happen once in the very past due to an incident, and it caused the world to turn upside down. The government at the time had literally thrown themselves at the Briefs' feet to beg them not to do this. Who knows? Izuku's reply was disappointing to All Might. It seems that both the two problem children, as Aizawa had dubbed, have a lot of secrets, but All Might didn't let it bother him that much. Everyone is entitled to have their own secrets as long as it doesn't bring harm to others. To All Might, as long as those two continue to wield their quirk for the good of the people, that is more than enough for him to be happy. From what he had seen so far, The two are not only strong, but they were also willing to interact with others. All Might had half expected that the two would be too arrogant, that they would be unable to look past their noses, but he was happy that he was wrong about them. The two had a bright future ahead of them, and depending on what they do today, they might be eligible candidates for being the 9th user of OFA, although they're quite violent and chaotic. All Might worried about this. It's not like he's looking for a successor who is a carbon copy of himself like this Mirio kid who, while good-natured, was already in his last year at the academy, and so adding OFA to his already difficult-to-control Quirk would be unfair. Even then, those two worried him the most. Izuku already proved that he had a habit of egging others intentionally, while Bakugo already proved that he is a ticking time bomb that is ready to explode on anyone's face. So it left him a bit hesitant. He let out a sigh and decided to push those thoughts away as he heard the sounds of footsteps. Like he had asked, they all came in the ranking order as they showed off their respective hero costumes. Kirishima started as he looked at both Izuku and Bakugo. How do you guys dress so fast? It was a question that many had shared. We didn't see you enter the changing rooms with us back then. He walked towards the two and marveled at their hero costume. Izuku didn't say anything. He just simply opted to show them by pressing the button on the watch, causing his hero costume to disappear and be replaced with UA's standard clothes, gaining looks of surprise before he pressed it once more, resulting in his hero costume to appear once more. Is that a Capsule Corporation watch? Yaoyorozu asked in genuine surprise. Her parents had done business with the Briefs many times in the past, and as such, she had been well versed in how expensive their products are, and so it came to her as a surprise that the two could afford such support items. Ahem! All Might coughed loudly in his hand to gain the attention back on him, and he successfully did so. I'm happy that you all are communicating and are furthering your bonds with one another, but I'd prefer that you do so after this class is over. All Might did not mind if they just sat down and talked amongst each other, but he had only 50 minutes for this period to teach. If he neglected his duties as a teacher, he wouldn't hear the end of it from Aizawa, who will chew him out for it, and will try to start a problem. We're sorry, All Might, sir. Ida shouted rather stiffly as he stood wearing an all-body armor suit that is modeled after his older brother Tensei Ida, who is the hero ingenium. It's quite all right. All Might raised one hand to calm him down. Today's hero class will be indoor anti-personnel battle training. All Might revealed with a bright smile, with his teeth reflecting light in the faces of the students, causing some to cover their faces and making Aoyama green with envy. Villain battles are most commonly seen outdoors, but All Might paused as he saw attentiveness from his students. Statistically, the most heinous villains are more likely to appear indoors. He revealed, his ever-so-permanent smile seemed to become slightly serious. That's true. After all, why would you even leave yourself out in the open to be picked on by the hundreds of licensed heroes in Japan? Izuku thought. That is, unless you have the power to render numbers meaningless with raw power alone. Many of the small fry villains tend to just make the mistake of attacking out in broad daylight where many heroes are out patrolling. When cornered by the heroes, they fight back instead of choosing to escape. Those are some of the many cliché rookie mistakes done by the villains. If you fight in the dead of the night where hero patrols are far less than in the morning, your chances are far higher. That also increases if you have a sort of base of operation, hence giving you a significant territorial advantage against the heroes who will be going in blind. You'll now be split into villain teams and hero teams. All Might announced, and face off in 2-on-2 indoor battles. The symbol of peace revealed the training for today. So no basic training? Tsuyu asked with a tilted head, a question that some of the students in the class were also curious about, as battles between students seemed to be very abrupt for their second day at UA, but the symbol of peace did not look worried. Practical experience teaches you the basics. All Might answered with a big grin on his face, a sentiment that is closely shared by both Izuku and Bakugo, who agreed with the symbol of peace. Kind of reminds me of the time when Piccolo tossed me and Gohan in a large mountain and told us to just fly down. Izuku thought with amusement, as well as a bit of nostalgia. Or when he would punch us at random while telling us to dodge to get us to develop our battle senses. At the time, Gohan was a total crybaby. It wasn't like he didn't have some of his embarrassing moments, but he was far more motivated to fight compared to Gohan, who had little desire to even fight or do anything at all other than to study to be a scholar. The distinction here is that you won't be fighting disposable robots. All Might explained before he shifted to look at everyone in the class. Shall we begin, my wards? It's time for battle training. All Might announced once more as he got everyone to straighten up. There were a few questions that had been asked shortly after, but with how rapid they were, All Might found himself helplessly unable to keep up with all of them. At one point, the symbol of peace, who is unaccustomed to teaching, had pulled out a small note. Listen up. Here's the deal. All Might got the attention of everyone in the class. The villains will be hiding a nuclear weapon in the hideout, and the heroes have to go in and take care of it. Is he really reading from a small note? Izuku thought with surprise. It's not like it was necessarily a bad thing. Most people don't have a strong enough memory to memorize, but still, did he really need to read? It wasn't like it was a complicated one. The heroes have a limited amount of time to either capture the villains or secure the weapon. All Might explained while still reading from the note. The villains must either capture the heroes or protect the weapon until time is up. Your battle partners will be decided by. All Might shifted to pull out a box with a lot written all over. Drawing lots. The number one announced while gaining apprehension from Ida. Is that really the best way? Ida asked in clear apprehension of All Might's method of selection. After all, wouldn't it be best if they were to be all teamed up according to who they get along with? Heroes won't always get the luxury of choosing who they actually want to team up with. Izuku started getting Ida's attention, and everyone. Certain emergencies will require the heroes to act quickly, even if it means working with others you normally don't work with. Ultimately, we are all heroes. Our collective goal is to defeat villains while at the same time saving the lives of the innocent. Izuku continued. So when it comes down to it, we're all comrades. So this exercise will be more helpful in developing thick skin against those you don't like. I see. Ida seems to have finally realized everything and shot the green-haired hybrid Saiyan with a look of admiration for having realized something even he never thought about. I apologize for getting ahead of myself. My mistake. The teen apologized. It didn't take long for the lots to be drawn. Izuku arched an eyebrow and then turned to look at the brown-haired girl whose face was etched in a mix of both despair and a look of resignation, as if her fate had been sealed from the very start and she had to accept it. Why is she acting like I'm going to pull her behind the school building? Izuku let out a sigh. Then again, this is the result of my action back in the entrance exams. The heroes are Team A. All Might announced as he pulled a white ball with A engraved on it with black marker. The villains are Team D, announced the symbol of peace as he pulled another ball, but it was black in color, and the D is written in black. Whoa there! Kaminari let out a startled voice. Is it all right for those two to be fighting against each other? Kaminari asked with clear anxiety as he saw that both Izuku and Bakugo were against each other in this exercise, and he didn't like it one bit. If the entrance exam and the Quirk apprehension test was any indication, the two together or against each other is just asking for a disaster. It was a feeling shared by many who worried that the two powerhouses will not just bring the entire building down, but rather the entire ground beta. I have to agree as well. Tsuyu added as she looked at All Might. The two of them have already proven themselves to be extremely powerful. It worries me what will happen if they were to duke it out. Tsuyu shifted to look at Ida and Uraraka, especially with those two sharing the same building as them. It's quite all right. All Might raised one hand to stop the chatter. I understand your collective concerns, but this is also more reason why those two should be paired against one another. Gaining a surprised look from the other students for his decision. From what we've seen so far, the two are great rivals as they are friends. All Might said, if we pair other students against one of them, it will be unfair. But at least those two fighting together will give them both the challenge needed. All Might explained, it seems like we're both going to be duking it out on the second day. Izuku said with a grin, which the ashy blonde explosion user smirked as he raised a fist for a fist bump which Izuku returned with his own. I may not be as strong as you, Shalot, Katsuki admitted, but I ain't going to make it any easier for you to win this, so you will have to take our battle very seriously, he challenged, which made Izuku smile, clearly enjoying this as the two walked forward. Sure thing, Katsuki. Izuku replied with a smirk. He's going to crush Bakugo in this exercise, no matter what, a sentiment shared by the explosion user. Make sure to struggle as much as you can, because I will definitely enjoy seeing you squirm. The two shared a laugh. Hero versus villain. The villain team goes in first. All Might explained. The timer starts in 5 minutes when the hero team sneaks in. All Might paused a bit as he looked at everyone to see if they were following so far. The rest of us will watch via CCTV. Ida, Bakugo, you boys need to adopt a villain mindset. All Might shifted to the two teens. This is practical experience, so go all out. Don't hold back. All Might encouraged. Though I will stop you if you take things too far. He also quickly assured them. So, how do we go about doing this? Uraraka awkwardly asked as she kept her face firmly in the blueprint of the building, while Izuku glanced at her for a brief moment, before he kept his eyes firmly in front of him, having already got through reading the blueprint. Me and Katsuki share a history together since we're childhood friends, so I'm familiar with his disposition. Knowing him, he will rush forward to confront me in a 1v1, leaving behind his teammate to guard the bomb. I see, she muttered with a bit of relief. She had expected that conversing with the green hair would be awkward. But wouldn't it be ideal for him to just team up with Ida-kun? She asked, wondering if she was overstepping herself here. Katsuki is smart. Izuku praised the blonde, as despite his overall attitude, he is known for his academic excellence even back in middle school. If we end up fighting, both you and Ida will get caught in the middle of it. Hence, it is in the best interest of all of us if we took our fight elsewhere. Their powers were beyond anything one could imagine. An explosion from Katsuki could destroy Ground Beta if he were to put some power in it. If the two of them clash, Ida and Uraraka will lose their life in the process of trying to get away. For now, you should leave Katsuki for me to handle. Izuku turned to look at the brown-haired gravity girl. For you, I want you to deal with Ida, or to at the very least capture the weapon, which would be a guaranteed victory for us as the hero team. That will be difficult. She sullenly complained at his expectation. Ida-kun is fast for me to capture, or even get behind him to grab the bomb and get us a victory. You're not thinking the right way. Izuku sighed with irritation as he poked her head a bit. I'm not asking you to outspeed him or to try to capture him. This is very much beyond your capabilities. Izuku added bluntly. Even then, you can still outsmart him. So how do you suggest I'd go about beating him? She asked challengingly. It was clear that she still held bitterness from the day of the entrance exam. It was Izuku's selfishness that nearly took away her chances at getting into UA hadn't it been for the retry. From what I've noted so far from yesterday, Quirk Apprehension Ida can only run in a straight line. Izuku pointed out bluntly. He can't steer himself in any other direction, especially if it's at the last second. Izuku explained. So take advantage of it. Make him rush towards you, and then at the last second throw yourself on the floor, allowing him to run past you and hit a few walls on his way. And if you're lucky, Ida might end up knocking himself out cold, Izuku pointed. Then, it will be your chance to capture the weapon. It was a fairly simple one. All she had to do was to use herself as bait, and Ida, who doesn't know the concept of underhandedness, or rather wouldn't expect it, would rush blindly at Uraraka with the intention of knocking the air out of her lungs. Uraraka will throw herself on the side at the very last second. Ida, who had no way of pulling the brakes on his speed, or changing direction especially in such a narrow place, will eventually find himself planting into a wall kind of like Tom and Jerry. If you don't like how risky it is, then make use of his very serious disposition. Izuku added. Ida is a stickler to the rule. He'd most likely be trying to get into the villain role. Grab a pebble and toss it far away, distracting him long enough to run for the bomb. Izuku didn't think it would work. It was a momentary distraction, and it will only work if Uraraka is fast enough to capitalize on that second or two, but he truly doubted it would work in the first place. If that isn't to your satisfaction, then use your quirk. Izuku pressed forward. Your quirk is zero gravity. It's a perfect counter to Ida's speed if you can make contact. Izuku explained. With him floating in the air, he'd be semi-vulnerable. Izuku truly doubted that Ida could fight against zero gravity. His speed quirk isn't equipped with running on air, unless he of course missed something, but he truly doubted that Ida would have trained for such a scenario, so he was confident it would work. Uraraka was left speechless at his words. All those plans were good, and she could see herself being able to do it, as it's within her capabilities. She is also left surprised that he would help her and give her advice. I don't know why you're underestimating yourself. Izuku huffed with a bit of annoyance. You're very much capable of neutralizing Ida if you actually do believe you can. Uraraka looked surprised by his compliment. Besides, it's not like I will completely leave you on your own. They were teammates at the end of it all. Izuku was still going to give her a bit of help, but he will be busy having his game with Katsuki. Even then, if Uraraka executes the plan perfectly, she is guaranteed a victory over Ida, allowing her to confiscate the bomb, securing their victory in this exercise. I will be helping you get into the floor, right underneath Ida, using my quirk to float you silently up there. Izuku explained. This way, you wouldn't have to get caught in my game with Katsuki. All you have to do is to play your role in this match. Oh! She was genuinely surprised by his compliments, and it made her feel a bit bad for being rude to him at the start. She also felt good to receive praise for her mediocre quirk, especially from someone who is naturally born with a powerful quirk like Izuku's. My name is Ochako Uraraka, by the way. She introduced herself awkwardly. At first, she had no intention of befriending Izuku, but now she quickly changed her mind. He wasn't as bad as she had imagined. They had just started on the wrong foot, that's all. Izuku Midoriya. Just call me whatever you like. I don't really mind, nor am I big on formalities. Izuku replied back with a smirk. Now, they were finally getting somewhere. Before she could attempt to strike conversation once more with Izuku, All Might's voice echoed through the ground beta, announcing the start of the exercise and giving the hero team the permission to infiltrate the building in order to capture the weapon or the villains. The rest of the class are all collectively watching everything through a monitor room, along with All Might, who is standing with both a pen and paper ready to grade the 4 students on their performance in this exercise. All of them were excited to see how this goes. Izuku had started. Using telekinesis, Uraraka found herself being floated in the second last floor of the building. Despite the fact that Uraraka could easily do that with her own quirk, Izuku had noted that she had a limit and might end up going over her limits. Let's get this show started. Izuku whispered excitedly as he walked in rather confidently, as if he was taking a stroll in an amusement park. Izuku had long since pinpointed Katsuki's location through his ki, and so he was going to him in order to start their game. Just like he had predicted, Katsuki already took off to find him the moment All Might had given them the okay. With their speed, it didn't take long for the two to find each other, with the ashy blonde teen taking a swing at Izuku with his left hand coated with explosion. Boom! The explosion had resulted in the building to tremble as if an earthquake was happening. The heat of the explosion enveloped the entire hallway alongside Izuku, scorching everything in the process, much to the shock of everyone in the monitor room. Isn't that a bit too much? Ojiro asked in the monitor room as he watched as the smoke covered the cameras, making it hard for them to even determine the fate of their classmate. Before anything could be said, Izuku's voice was heard from the monitor. Not bad, Izuku said as he came out of the attack unharmed. This came as an even greater shock to the others that Izuku had easily shrugged off such an attack that would normally leave many of them knocked out, if not badly very injured. Whoa! Midoriya tanked through Bakugo's explosion like it was really nothing. Kirishima expressed his own excitement openly. This is really manly. Kirishima shed a few manly tears. I know, right? Mina agreed with Kirishima with an excited grin of her own as she looked like she was going to jump from excitement. Midori is sure like a Terminator tanking through such an attack. Is there anything he can't really do? She wondered with a grin. Bakugo huffed angrily, but his lips curled into a smirk as he put some distance between him and his childhood friend. I knew this wouldn't be even enough to take you down, Shalat. Izuku smirked as he then raised his palm in the air. A translucent green ball appeared in his palm before he tossed it into the air. Instantly, a barrier had surrounded the two of them, expanding the space inside the barrier he had created. What is that? Kaminari asked in clear worry, a feeling that was shared by many of his classmates as they watched through the monitor as a deep aqua-colored barrier covered the two inside, seemingly expanding from deep inside, but the outside remained relatively the same. Amazing! Yaoyorozu admired the barrier. It's a sort of spatial barrier that expands the space inside, but it keeps what's outside unaffected, she explained. It seems that Midoriya-san is taking into consideration the dangers that will come from their battle. It was a close guess on Yaoyorozu's part. It's a space-time barrier, which Izuku, to some degree, could manipulate both space and time, hence defying the laws of physics. It had been inspired mostly from the hyperbolic time chamber that is a completely different dimension from the Earth's dimension. Everyone seemed to note what Yaoyorozu had said with great shock, that also included All Might, who listened silently as he tapped his pen against the paper contemplating on the new revelation. Izuku then exploded forward with great speed, leaving behind shockwaves as he launched a devastating punch at Katsuki. A punch that would destroy the entire building in the process, hadn't it been for the barrier set up beforehand to prevent damage. The latter had reflexively put his guard up to block the punch, with Izuku's fist connecting against his elbow. Katsuki grit his teeth as he felt his bones creak from the force of the punch, with Izuku digging his fist even more. Katsuki, not backing down, had launched a roundhouse kick with an explosion to Izuku's side. Boom! Instantly, he put distance between him and Izuku, knowing that not even such an explosion would put a bruise in Izuku, as he absent-mindedly just rubbed his very bruised arm where he got punched in. "That's cute," Izuku mocked lightly as he blew the smoke with a burst of ki. His body now coated into a deep aqua-colored aura, while the green-haired hybrid Saiyan grinned broadly, as if this is nothing more than a game. Even then, Katsuki was far from being discouraged by such an overwhelming difference in power. He had long since come to acknowledge that Izuku was born genetically superior to him. He was just glad that he got to become as strong as he did. Even then, I still don't plan to give up on trying to reach your level, Shalat, if not surpass you, Katsuki thought with a grin of his own. Even though he had accepted the difference in genetics and powers, he is Katsuki Bakugo, and he never gave up even in the face of insurmountable challenges. As such, a light orange aura seems to gush out of him from all his pores. He decided to start taking this fight more seriously, seeing as Izuku is taking it a bit seriously. Izuku then launched himself once more with fluidity and grace that had taken the spectators off guard, his hand coated in the aqua-green color aura. As he got close to Katsuki, these fluid-like water movements turned into a storm of violent punches. The first punch that Izuku had landed caused a shockwave to explode from all directions, threatening to crush the very barrier set in place, which is constantly being under repair by Izuku's energy. Despite the devastating punch, Katsuki managed to respond in kind. Izuku spat out a few saliva as Katsuki landed a punch in his sternum coated with explosion, but he managed to shrug it off quickly and uppercut Katsuki into the ceiling of the barrier, causing the explosion user to bounce off about everywhere in the barrier, ricocheting around. Izuku rushed forward once more and openly displayed the full extent of his martial arts to the entire class. Katsuki, who paled in comparison to Izuku's years of training from the age of 4, found himself quickly getting overwhelmed, as Izuku abused every part of his body with punches. While Katsuki's martial arts is impeccable and honed to a great degree, Izuku had easily found holes in his martial arts and landed punches everywhere. He found an opening in making it impossible for Katsuki to even have the chance to retaliate against his childhood friend. Izuku crouched down and masterfully swept his feet from right underneath him before launching a one-handstand double kick to the blonde sternum. This had the result of sending Bakugo flying to the other side of the barrier. Gah! Katsuki yelled in pain as the air was knocked out of his lungs, making him fall to the ground in a heap. But even then, Katsuki's indomitable spirit had shown to everyone that he had yet to give up. This was nothing, since he was used to fighting Izuku on a much higher level. Wow! Kirishima wiped the sweat forming in his forehead as he watched the few minutes of battle between the two. This battle is so intense. They're not even holding back on each other. Kind of manly, Kirishima said with a bit of excitement, mixed with a feeling of inferiority. Kirishima looked at his hands, which hardened due to his quirk. Hardening. It was a pretty cool quirk, but it was not as flashy as some of his classmates. The fight he just witnessed left him wondering if he would be able to keep up with those too much less his other classmates. It's really unmanly for me to feel jealousy towards my classmates. Kirishima snapped himself back to reality. I just need to do my best, that's all. Kirishima tried to muster such determination, but he still felt depressed. All Might Sensei. Tsuyu spoke up, snapping All Might from his dazed shock. Is it really alright for us to not be doing anything? She asked. Isn't this fight getting a little too far? They almost look like they're trying to kill one another. Tsuyu's concern resonated with everyone in the class. a concern that many in the class had expressed either vocally like "Tsuyu" or just showed overall silent discomfort. Yeah, Rikido hesitantly spoke as well. I feel uncomfortable watching this. It's just too extreme for me to stomach. Rikido expressed his discomfort from the match while rubbing his belly. It felt like he might vomit. I get your point. All Might agreed as he gripped onto the mic. I will interfere if I feel like it's going too far. I don't want to disrespect their fighting spirit. All Might answered, but deep inside, he was questioning if he was actually making the right choice or not. Even then, seeing the fighting spirit of the two struck a chord in him. Could he even get in between such a fight? He knew that the two must be holding back, but he didn't know to what extent. So despite his urge to put a stop to this, he hesitated. He hoped he wouldn't regret this decision. A typical boys. Hagakure complained as she averted her eyes from the screen, seeing as Katsuki was coughing blood. They always do things like this, and one wonders why it's women who tend to live longer than those with brains for muscles. Naturally, some of the boys looked at the invisible girl with indignation for her offensive words. They're not muscle brains. They're just passionate about a lot of things. Some are just a bit too much like both Izuku and Katsuki, but it's harmless. I'm sorry, Midoriya-kun. Uraraka apologized in her head. She had ended up compromising her own hiding position earlier when she let out a laugh escape her lips upon seeing Ida getting into the role of a villain. Ida, who had taken notice of her hiding position, wasted no time in starting his monologue like Izuku had earlier predicted. Despite this, it seems that Ida had been attentive enough yesterday to remove anything in the room that could be used to slow against him. Even though she could no longer use distraction to her advantage as she had originally intended, there were two other working plans, which were either get Ida to chase after her with his quirk effectively getting him to hit himself in the walls of the narrowed building, or to take the offensive. Ah! She let out a battle cry. Even though she had failed to distract him due to compromising her position, she could still improvise. Her target had been the bomb, or so that's what Ida had thought, who turned half around to protect the bomb. Squeeze! Her hand shot forward before it changed direction at the last second to grab the younger brother of Ingenium, taking him by complete surprise as he found himself becoming weightless, floating in the air as Uraraka denied him gravity, preventing him from making use of his speed quirk. What? Ida was rightfully flustered by this trickery that was unexpectedly done by the hero. His training hadn't prepared him well enough to fight against one of the four fundamental forces of the universe, gravity. This is Ida. Uraraka gave another battle cry as she had then grabbed Ida's outstretched arm and performed a taekwondo throw. With her quirk, she had an easier time doing so, as Ida, who was under the effect of zero gravity, weighed nothing. Releasing the effect of gravity at the last second, Ida found himself slamming hard against the concrete floor, denting it in the process and knocking the air out of his lungs. It was partly thanks to the full-body armored suit he wore that the shock had been bearable. "This is our win, Ida-kun," she shouted as she rushed to grab the bomb, as she made use of the few seconds she bought for herself to hug the bomb with both her arms and legs, granting the hero team a victory over the villain team, something which All Might announced loudly. "The hero team wins." All Might's voice echoed through all of the ground beta. This caused the two to pause from fighting, with Izuku wiping the trickle of blood that formed in his lips. Bakugo still stood on both his feet despite how beaten up he was. Izuku didn't look like he struggled that much, but Bakugo had fought well. If he was allowed to fight all out without worrying about others getting caught, Bakugo might do more damage, not that it would change the outcome of the battle. In the end, Izuku had proven his superior combat skills and forced Katsuki into a corner. Now everyone in the class should know by now that Izuku Midoriya is the strongest student in the entire class. Here, Izuku pushed forward what appeared to be a small vial. Katsuki, who recognized what it was, reached out for it and grabbed it. "You fought well. If you got to fight at your very best, I wouldn't have come out unscathed." Izuku complimented him. "No need to butter me up." Katsuki scoffed as he drank the content of the vial. He felt all the pain wrecking his body disappear as if they were but dream. All of that was the miracle work of the Senzu potion. Cliché, definitely yes, but it's effective. It was a project that Izuku, Bulma, and Inko had worked on. The Senzu bean was useful, and they can't ever go to a fight without having one on them at all times for an emergency situation. It was the Senzu bean that saved their lives many times in the past, but it had a side effect. The senza bean worked as a substitute for eating. It means that if you take one, you won't need to eat for 10 days straight. This could be a bit too much for a normal human unaccustomed to doing so. Hence, upon his own suggestion years ago, Izuku got both his aunt and mom to help him in this project. It was not easy, but it wasn't impossible. In the end, they've created countless other products centered around the senza beans to help. The senza potion is less potent compared to if you take the real senza bean, since it was modified enough to deal with minor injuries and exhaustion. Of course, the side effect was that you'll have to go a day without eating, but it is far more tolerable compared to the original senza bean. I know the difference in our power is too huge. Bakugo said as he walked by Izuku's side as they exited the building. I'm not that upset over it. You've had far longer years of training and largely your genes supporting you. Bakugo said, while Izuku didn't deny them. Saiyans have Zenkai boost, allowing them in general to come back stronger from every battle they fight. Many had called it a cheap power-up system that gave the Saiyans a potential for unlimited growth because the very concept of a limit is foreign to Saiyans. Izuku had been fighting since the age of 4. From the time when Raditz first set foot on Earth to Vegeta and Nappa invading the Earth for the Dragon Balls, and later when he traveled to Namek, which led to several battles with Frieza's minions, which in turn led to a final showdown with the Galactic Space Tyrant. Even after returning from Namek, Izuku had no chance to particularly rest, as he had to fight the androids that nearly destroyed everything, which later led to Cell being born and becoming perfect upon absorbing both 17 and 18, and thus evolving. It came down to a final showdown with Izuku and Gohan teaming up to blast Cell straight to hell. With Goku's sacrifice, Earth regained peace. So with such a resume, Katsuki didn't feel particularly angry at his loss. Instead, it had only motivated him to reach that level. You guys, wait up! Uraraka shouted as she, alongside Ida, rushed to catch up to the two, and much to both their shock, Katsuki looked roughed up if we compare him to Izuku. Well, I'd say the VIP in this battle, Ida. All Might revealed, much to the surprise of many in the class, as some expected that it would be Izuku who is the VIP due to his dominance in the entire battle exercise. I guess we can't always get to be at the top all the time. Izuku laughed it off, clearly not bothered by it. This came as a surprise from many of the students who expected that he would be angry at having his UA record-breaker streak interrupted. Are you not upset with this? Shoji asked carefully as he stared down at the green-haired beast, who in turn shook his head with a wry smile, as if he just asked a stupid question. No, not really. Izuku denied being upset. His smile and overall calmness showed that he has good sportsmanship. We can't always be the winner at everything. Besides, I did expect that kind of outcome. Izuku explained while All Might was intrigued. Oh, can you tell us why you think that way, young Midoriya? All Might asked eagerly. The symbol of peace wanted to hear Izuku's assessment. Clearly, he was surprised and happy that Izuku was accepting this. Me and Bakugo had separated from our respective partners in order to duke it out somewhere else, when the goal of the exercise is preferably teamwork, I assume. Izuku explained as he received a nod from many. You guessed it right. All Might nodded his head approvingly for this. While there are times when heroes have to divide in order to cover a wide area, it's ideal to fight with your teammate in order to complete the mission as efficiently as possible. Not only that, Izuku interjected once more. So while it's for a good reason that we chose to take our fights away in order to avoid harming our partners, it still did not change that we were purely motivated by our desire to compete in a 1v1 uninterrupted. Izuku continued to explain. I could have aimed to neutralize Katsuki in order to assist Uraraka, but due to trusting in her capability to handle it on her own mixed with enjoying my fight with Katsuki, I pushed it in the back of my mind. Izuku admitted, making the gravity girl blush at the trust. Correct. All Might shouted approvingly. Indeed, I do have to first applaud the two of you for being considerate to your teammates. All Might applauded the two, but as young Midoriya admitted, the two of you have gotten distracted by your fight. I understand, All Might said with his arm raised. It's always fun to slug it out with your friend in order to measure one's strength, but it should be practiced in moderation, so as to not get in the way of the line of duty. So remember that you two. All Might patted both Izuku and Katsuki in the head. In regards to young Uraraka, All Might had shifted his attention to the very nervous girl. You fought admirably very well, and you've even managed to surprisingly neutralize young Ida. Uraraka's face brightened up. But you had given away your position to the enemy. If it wasn't for young Midoriya's foresight in formulating 3 plans for you to use against young Ida, this might have been the hero team's loss that day. All Might pointed out, making Uraraka lower her head a bit. Either way, I still commend you for improvising even though it was reckless. All Might praised. Everyone in the class was surprised, as they couldn't hear what was being said from the monitor. All Might's words informed them that Izuka did indeed play a significant role in the hero team's victory, making many of them perk up even more. If Izuka didn't go all battle junkie on Katsuki, Izuka might have actually been crowned as the VIP of the match instead of Ida, who also made some mistake as well. As for you, young Ida, All Might shifted to look at the unmasked teen who went stiff. Your plans were solid. I do commend you for your counter-strategy against young Uraraka. Ida smiled. But you made mistakes of your own, very fatal ones. For starters, you were distracted, All Might pointed out. If it wasn't for young Uraraka giving away her own position, the match might have ended not even a single minute since the start of the battle. Ida flinched at hearing this much criticism. I do applaud you for the monologue. You did very well in trying to demoralize young Uraraka. All Might praise him a bit. But you were very stiff and got distracted once more when you started to give your villain speech, allowing for young Uraraka to take advantage of it. I'm truly sorry, sir. Ida apologized sincerely as he gave a stiff bow. I have a lot to learn. Ida continued while All Might awkwardly scratched his cheek at the young man's stiff attitude. Either way, I'd say that you are the VIP, as you were more attuned to your role as a villain in this exercise. All Might applauded the young man. I advise you to work on being less stiff and attentive, especially not falling for underhanded tactics. I will take note of that, sir, Ida said while trying to be less stiff in his bowing, which All Might was happy with. Thank you for the criticism. The teen raised his head, his eyes sparkling at how good UA is. He felt a degree of shame as he remembered the day of the entrance exam. Good. All Might shifted to the rest of the class. We will announce the next team to fight, so prepare yourselves. All Might said managed to get everyone to get serious and ready.
Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. If you found this video entertaining and thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-ifs coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep embracing the power of imagination. Goodbye everyone.